Okay, guys, so welcome to this episode of the Journey Podcast with the Dead Pair Podcast. I'm pretty excited about this. I'm just going to let it go for just a few seconds to see if you guys can all hear me. Um, the It looks like Colo is saying that he can hear me, and that's cool. Richard Colo is here, so really honored to have you on here, Doc. Um, anyways. Um, let's I guess we'll just switch it over and introduce everybody else. We have Jason and Sean here, so I will switch it over. Okay, guys, we're here. So I was just on the main page and I introduced you guys. So now we're on this page and everybody can see you and hopefully hear you. So just give a little mic test real quick and we'll make sure everybody can hear each of you. Yes, yeah, I can hear you. So what I'll do is let me just have the chat, everybody in chat, just let me know if you can or cannot hear these guys. And while we're waiting for that to come through, I'll just give a little update. So guys, we actually have we have Dr. Colo watching on this one, so that's pretty exciting. Um, and Ron Schwartz is saying that the audio and video looks good, so I guess we're good. Um, okay, so uh, can't hear the guests, is what they're saying. Fantastic. Can't hear the guests. Do you guys have the thing muted on your iPads? Okay. Okay. Um, let's see. Wow, gosh dang. It should work now. Um, it's not that he's hearing you off of my headphones. You know, it just never fails to have a ridiculous bull crap. Uh, like just it it really is. But I don't know how I can make them uh, hear you. We had it working, and I didn't change a single thing, and now it's not working. So I guess we're just gonna do this. I'm gonna take my Bluetooth off, and I'm gonna put you guys on speaker. Go ahead and try and say something, guys.
Testing one, two, testing one, two.
Okay, so I'm gonna be holding the phone up here until we figure out what the heck's going on. Um, well, sorry guys. Okay, so I guess let's just go and figure out like how many of you guys were able to listen to the episode of Jason and I kind of trying to figure out all the world's problems. Why don't while we're waiting for yeah, this sucks. Um, guys, guys. I don't know what to do here. Yeah. No, it doesn't. You can't do it that way. Because it. Okay, let's do this. Hold on. Okay, so I'm back here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to put you guys on hold for 5 minutes. I'm going to delete all my audio sources, put them back in, and hope to God that this freaking works because I'm sick and tired of 4 weeks in a row having either audio or video issues with this freaking YouTube thing. So give me 5 minutes, guys. I apologize. It's going to be good. It'll work. I had it working before we started, and apparently it's not working right now, but we'll see how it goes. So I will be right back. No, stay on the phone. Okay, so I think we have it all good to go. I'm going to do an audio check for Jason and Sean, and we'll test that and see, and I think we're good. Jason? Hello? Hey, guys. Oh,
Yo, test.
um,
Can you hear me now? Hello,
I can hear you, Jay.
hello. Hi, David.
I don't think he's got us on yet.
He asked us to say something.
Oh, I couldn't hear him then, for whatever reason.
Hello.
there we go. Okay,
Can you hear me, David?
I can hear you, and can you just add Sean in again?
I should still be
Hello.
on here. Can you hear me?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, you're there.
Yeah, I'm
Okay,
here.
cool. Everybody can hear you now, so we are good to go.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes. I mean, I wish
Yes, but we just don't
I
want
wish
to.
I didn't, but
Oh, okay, gotcha.
okay, so let's hope that we're good to go. I don't know why that happened. Literally, all I did was end everything and reset the whole thing, and it worked again. So, yeah. So everybody, the reason why. So Sean's video sometimes locks up. It just has to do with his service, I think, a little bit. But if as long as we can hear, we're good. So let's get into it finally. Now that we have everything ready to go. So why don't we just start off with, while we let the chat kind of roll in a little bit, why don't we start off with having you guys, Sean and Jason, why don't you just kind of like give us a little update with some of the stuff you have coming up with the Dead Pair podcast? Like, what's on the calendar that you're allowed to talk about? I don't know if I'm.
Well, obviously we have
right now.
part 2 coming out tomorrow, and then following that, just as discussed in the podcast we did with you, David, or that you and I did, we have an episode on being downclassed. So, which is pretty interesting, really.
I think, Jason, if you can hear me, that you have your phone on mute because I can't hear you talking.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. You were
Yes.
sitting there with your lips moving and nothing was going on.
Yeah,
Well, this is like a bad Verizon commercial or something.
it really is.
So we have part 2 coming out tomorrow of the podcast that you and I did, David, and then following that, we have an episode on being downclassed, as we discussed in that episode that you and I recorded, and it's pretty interesting, really. Melanie Parker and Paul Prucker are both our guests for that episode, and they've been back and forth between Masterclass probably half a dozen times between the two of them. So, and then Sean just got downclassed. So it's pretty interesting. I mean, as somebody that's never made it to Masters or been downclassed, it's pretty interesting to hear their perspectives, and I think people are going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, that is really cool. I like the whole series that you guys were doing with all of that, and like the approach that you're taking with some of the guests on there, and is the how is you said you were kind of breaking up audio wise for me. You said Pauline is how is she everything? What's the status with her?
Are you talking about Stephanie, Sean's wife?
No, I mean, yeah, I didn't know if you were comfortable talking about that, Sean. But I was just asking about Pauline. If were you guys doing like a shoot with her or something, or you're doing something?
Oh, you're talking about Roseanne Prucka?
Oh yeah, I couldn't hear what you said. You broke up a little bit.
Yeah, so the two guests that we have coming on are Melanie Parker and Paul Prucka. Roseanne is doing good, actually. From everything I understand, she's fighting a good fight. She's doing good.
Oh, very good. I'm hearing, or I'm reading Nate tell me that my audio is terrible. I don't know why. If you guys can't hear me that well, let me know. I think we may have lost Sean. Oh no, I saw him move.
Can you guys still hear me?
No, you were just frozen, and the fan above your head. Sean, it looks like the fan above your head is like. I don't know if you did that on purpose.
It's a beanie for Chad's hat. So.
Oh, that's Chad's hat. That's pretty cool. Okay, so have either of you guys yet gotten any feedback on the episode? Like, have you got any comments, Jason, about some of the stuff we were talking about?
No, I haven't. What I'm reading right now down in the comments is that you did a terrible job editing the audio on yours. Sounds like we're in a cave.
Well, we were.
The jury's still out on who's better at editing. I think my wife's going to get that award.
Man, I spent hours trying to fix that audio. I could not get it. I mean, it was so bad to begin with. It like hurt to listen to.
Well, she's in there right now. She's still working on it. Which she had everything done last night, and then the whole system crashed again. So I don't know if she's got a taste of Radulovich computer syndrome or what, but
yeah, I tend to create a lot of technical problems. I don't think it seems to be that a lot of people don't believe me on how long it takes me to do some things. But it's not because of my lack of understanding of technology. It's because technology hates me. It has nothing to do with my inability to like work the internet or a computer. Literally, I know how to do all of this stuff. It just doesn't work. So, I'm pretty sure that the audio. I got it. Yeah, I recorded a podcast after I edited the audio for the one that I released yesterday, but the guy that I was recording the podcast with was in here with me as I was editing the audio, because Jason, when I sent you the first version of it, you told me that the echo was terrible, and I told you I couldn't hear any echo. So I guess that's what you get for shooting competitive shotguns for 20 some years. So I had to use my student as my feedback loop for understanding if the audio was too echoey or not. So I'm just going to say, if it's terrible, I'm blaming him.
Don't put too much faith in the machines. That's the best.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly. Okay, so Jason, you have a live feed of the comments on YouTube. Are people saying, how is the audio? Is everything good? On my end, it seems to be good, but last time you told me I wasn't reading your comments, so I'm just going to rely on you just a little bit if you're looking at it.
Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of them here. They, I forget who said it, but one guy said, Jason, I hope your audio is better than David, so,
Well, that's not hard. Oh boy. Okay, so very cool. So why don't we do this? Because we have these two guys on the live podcast, and this is not an educational podcast, what I'd like to do is kind of open up the chat for questions on some of the most recent episodes that these guys have released, or some of the ones that I've released. So what I'll do is I'll give you a little synopsis of what I've been doing recently if you haven't been paying attention. Basically, it's been a few episodes of understanding how to be self-aware in your shooting, and basically be able to use that self-awareness in order to make real-time decisions as you're going through a round, to kind of listen to your body and strategically choose plans and build plans to execute in the cage, to kind of work around your current strengths and weaknesses. So we got that on my end. And then we have the thing that Jason and I just released, talking about the like the current state of affairs at the NSCA for the first half. The second half is a little bit more of a fun personal conversation. And then, guys, what are some you want to talk a little bit about some of your most recently released episodes?
Well, we've had
Go
quite
ahead,
a few.
Sean.
I know one of the. Okay. Well, we've had quite a few, and I think one of the most unique ones was we had Ricky on, Ricky Marshall, who's a trap shooter, and we got a good amount of feedback from that. I think he's a very entertaining person to have on and talk to. Gives a little bit different perspective, since we're usually focused on sport plays or task or something along those lines. But he was a great interview. I thought he had some really good stories, and definitely a heck of a shooter, that's for sure. And we've done quite a few. I mean, we always try to focus on something that most average shooters are kind of down class. That's going to be something that a lot of shooters have dealt with or maybe dealing with in the future. There's always questions about that, so we try to keep it relevant, and hopefully it's interesting for the listeners to hear what we have to say.
Yeah.
Well, Sean, if you don't mind, we got a question down here. Some people want to know how Steph is doing. If you don't mind giving everybody an update real quick, I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be good.
Sure. Yeah, real quick. So my wife had kind of a brain surgery last Wednesday to take care of an issue that she's been dealing with for years. That, long story short, we discovered last September, October, that has been plaguing her for like the last 5 or 6 years, was due to something called Chiari, where your brain kind of sags down and the fluid coming from your spinal cord doesn't circulate up into your skull. So had one of the top doctors in the world at the Cleveland Clinic take care of that last Wednesday, finally. She's on the road to recovery. She's feeling better, dealing with some nausea issue. The pain and stuff is coming down. Most surgeries do. There's obviously a little bit of time it's going to take to figure out what's been fixed, what hasn't been fixed. But overall, she's in good spirits. Just trying to get the nausea under control. She hasn't eaten a whole lot since last Wednesday. She's getting kind of hangry. So just trying to get that figured out. And I think once we do, then she's going to be in good shape.
Good. That's good. That's really good to hear. I bet that's got to take a lot of stress off you guys.
Yeah, it's been a tough thing, and Jason's been real accommodating. I mean, obviously with all this going on, we're trying to do the podcast. I mean, I've got a business that I run, so there's a million things that I could be doing otherwise. But when your wife of 26 years is having a problem, you got to definitely step up to the plate and take care of her. So I'm just thankful that we've got all the support of our family and friends, and we've had a ton of people reach out to us on social media, email, text, and stuff like that. Todd Archambault, actually, the day I got home from the hospital, he sent me a text. He goes, "Hey, I got dinner on its way. I know you're not going to feel like cooking." He had
wow.
Local place. Yeah, local pizzas. That was really nice. I had another friend of mine delivered one of those fruit bouquets. I can't remember the company that does them, but so it's been nice. I mean, we've really had some great people. I keep saying it over and over again. There's some fantastic people in this sport, and that just goes to prove right there, that there are a lot of them out there.
See, David, your students answer the phone and talk to us more than you do.
That's because I'm not even going to go into it.
Sean, I'm going to go ahead right here, right now, right in the beginning, right under the bus. So you asked us this night, and I told Sean about it, and he goes, "Yeah, tell him we'll do it, and then we won't answer our phone for the next 3 to 4 weeks."
Yeah, I mean, well, see, the thing about like having a life that's so chaotic that you can't even pay attention to what the hell is supposed to be going on in the moment that you're in, is that when other people throw your plans upside down, it's just like the status quo, and it's totally normal. So you're just like, okay. So I don't know if it's possible for you guys to get me back.
Give me time. I'll come up with something
Yeah.
funny.
Oh man. So let's start doing some questions for everybody that's listening. If anybody has any questions or anything, what I want to ask you guys while we're waiting for some questions to come on is, you know, my perspective, being the host of my podcast, is that I'm like, you guys are actually like the. I mean, I just had Curtis Dunbar on, but that really wasn't an interview, and I don't really have anything for this to be an interview. I mean, this is just an impromptu, informal hangout. But you're really the first guest I've had on any lives, and so I never really get to have conversations with people on my podcast, and even when, for the past couple of years when I've been doing other podcasts, I don't really do that. I'm normally the guest. So my question for you guys is, how much has, apart from the time that having your own podcast has taken away from the time that you have to shoot, how much has the conversations that you have had with people on there as guests, like you just talked about Ricky Marshall or other people, like has that helped you guys progress in your own shooting? Or at least some of the understanding of ways to approach certain parts of the game or things you're struggling with?
Sean, why don't you take it first, and then I'll follow up.
Well, Jason and I read back 2017. At that, we really didn't much about the work, and obviously, a lot of the big names and stuff we saw in magazines back in those days. Obviously, we had a little bit of starstruck awe about all you guys. But as we got into the podcast, and people started to recognize us, and we'd go to tournaments, and people come up to us. I mean, there's a huge learning curve. It's really cool. Like I said, it's a neat community. There's a lot of people out there that shoot and compete. But the neat thing that I've discovered is that there's a lot of people that want to see everybody else succeed, and they're very positive about it. They're willing to offer their help. They're willing to offer advice. I mean, David, you've helped us. Chad's helped us. Bill Elliott's helped us. I mean, I go on and on and on and on. I mean, and that's the wonderful thing about this sport. I think that if you get into it, you start shooting, you just need to reach out to a few people, and usually there's more than enough people willing to help. You learn, get better, point you in the right direction, volunteer maybe some coaches' names, it's just, there's a lot to it. And I just think it's really a nice sport that people realize how much help there actually is out there, and people aren't afraid to reach out and lend a helping hand.
Yeah.
So,
well, maybe I perceive the question different than Sean did. I think what you were asking, David, correct me if I'm wrong, is by interviewing all these people, has it helped our own personal game? Is that what you were asking?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I think, and to be honest with you, I hear the guests more than Sean does, because before my wife starts editing, I go and put everything together and edit for content, if one of us has slipped up or whatever. So I'm like going back through the podcast 4 and 5 times. And for me, everything that the guest is saying is coming in 4 or 5 times, plus when we interviewed them.
That's probably about half as much as you need it to come through with the thickness of your skull.
Oh no, it 5-6 more times would help. So, I'm looking at 2 guys' heads fill the screen here. Sean looks like a fat version of Inspector Gadget. Remember that thing used to pop out of his head?
Hold on a second. I got something in my eye. Hold on. There it is. Okay, I got it out there.
We're live here. So, this is why we don't do live.
Yeah.
So,
well, listen, I have 0 filters on my live. I don't care what we talk about.
To answer your question, I think it has. I think I have a more in-depth understanding of the game than I did before we started the podcast. Not only has my experience grown over the last 3 years, in shooting, but because of the podcast, I think it's given me a more in-depth understanding.
Yeah. I can see that. I can tell you like from the opposite end of the spectrum of teaching on podcasts. I mean that helps my game because it forces you to kind of like analytically think through a way to communicate something that
Right.
you end up having to understand it in so much of a better way. But yeah, I think I think that I've been, man, my ADHD doesn't do good when I can hear myself talking. Uh, the totally lost it. Don't know what I was gonna say. That one's gone. Um, let's see.
Oh man, you know what's see, and this is the hilarious thing that people don't get, David. That impromptu podcast that we did when we were in Florida, the one came out Monday and two's coming out tomorrow. You never did that. The whole podcast, like you never lost train of thought. It was just rolling with it. But something about being in a studio or in front of this camera, and you just squirrel, you know. And there
Well,
he goes.
the reason for that is because it's like when I'm doing this podcast, the thing that's hard about it is that I have to have such a segmented attention span because I have to go like think about what I'm talking about, read the chat, look at the video, check the audio mics, think about what I'm talking about, talk, read the chat, look at the video, look at the audio levels, and going through that process is really, really hard. But when I have a conversation with somebody or like when I'm teaching somebody, I mean, I'm just like very solely locked in. And it's very, very easy for me to, I mean, that's the thing about ADHD, and that's kind of why, when I'm competing, it's so much different too, is that ADHD, if you're engaged in something, it actually is the opposite of what a lot of people think, which is that they think that like it means you can't pay attention. It has nothing to do with not being able to pay attention. I actually can pay attention way more than anybody else because of my ADHD, because I get hyper focused on it. But it's when I am trying to multitask that it becomes impossible. So when how that translates into shooting is that I'm either going to be super hyper focused that I don't even hear you talking to me if we're having a conversation on the round, or you trying to talk to me because I'm thinking about the targets, or I'm not going to shoot good because I have to go in and out of focus. So the whole live stream thing is hard, but it's getting a little bit better. But this is a different thing. The first time I've ever done this with two guests and all this other stuff, so that's hard too. But you guys have it, man. I wish I didn't have. I'll trade your brains for mine if you want.
Well, this is one of the main reasons we haven't gone live on our podcast, because we just know all of the issues with not only the technology, but just, if you screw something up, I mean, the way we're doing it now,
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard, like doing, possibly, making mistakes on lives is pretty tough. But I think what's cool is, the community of people that join live shooting podcasts, it's like family, and so, the only thing you're gonna get is made fun of, and then people are still on board, So I think it's cool. I don't mind messing up, and I don't like to try to get. I definitely can't give the image that I'm don't make mistakes on things, because I am a freaking mess every day. Well, here's why I think that my podcast, the demographics are like nobody in the NSCA is going to listen to it. So I would imagine that we will hear the way that the podcast is split up, I think that the part that we could possibly get in trouble on, which really is just me going to get in trouble, is what's on my podcast. But the part that's going to be released on your episode is really just a really fun, personal, conversation between friends. And I think what will happen is that once people listen to that, they may, decide to come back to listen to the first half, and then that may be when I start to get phone calls and emails from the powers that be and tell me that they're rescinding my membership and kicked off Team USA. I can hear you totally fine. Yeah, I could hear you the whole time. Yeah. Yeah. Um, that's a good question. So it was like basically my inspiration for starting my podcast was a multifaceted thing. The first being that uh, I just really like doing podcasts. I think it's really fun. I like to connect to the people in the sport through some medium, um, and I also think that it's important to. The best way I can explain it is this: like as far as the educational aspect, everybody's saying that they can't hear you. Either of you guys. Um, no. So do this, guys. End your calls and click that link again. It'll probably fix it. No, keep the phone call up. That won't do anything.
Are we?
Oops. We are back, but I accidentally put. I had Sean and Jason's little box, and I had Jason and Sean's little box. Okay, see if you.
Careful, we gotta keep this PG.
Yeah, I know. That was pretty good. I'll give you that one. Jason, try to say something.
Hello, 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 hello. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, the audio levels are moving, so I know everybody will be able to hear you. Okay, so basically to answer your question, if you guys didn't hear, Sean basically just asked me, what was my reasoning to start the Journey podcast, and but the one part is that I just really like to do podcasts. Another part is that I'm a nerd and I enjoy the process of all the things involved in making a podcast. Like I like the audio editing, I like taking pictures, I like doing video, I like doing live streams, and the other part is that I think with educational information out on the internet, there is, really the ratio between terrible information that hurts people shooting to good information that's helpful is unfairly unequal. And so I really wanted to just, I think the more good information that we can get out there for people to be able to listen to for free and try to learn from is the better. That's why, it just kind of baffles me why some people think that like my podcast and your guys' podcast and other podcasts should be against each other. I think it's a good thing to be with each other. There's no competition there. And then another part was because of, selling out of Cypress Creek. A big problem that I had with my own shooting there was that I didn't have any time. I had no time to do anything other than work there, and so my shooting really kind of went down the toilet, so to speak. And I wanted to, knowing myself, knowing that I don't feel pressure, I wanted to put pressure on myself on a platform that everybody in the world can watch, and basically use the podcast as a way to motivate my shooting. And then lastly, I wanted to just create a course to help people accomplish their goals, because I figured if I'm going to do it, I might as well make it public for other people to watch and follow along, and we can all do it together and develop a cool community in doing that. So which it's been really good so far, and it's been a lot of fun. And I appreciate from you guys the support and the help on that. It's cool to me that we can, do things like what we're doing right now. Once we get the audio and video issues worked out, I would not have a problem if you guys wanted to in the future do more of these. If you guys, anytime you guys want to join me on this, you're more than welcome to. We can do ones where we actually prepare things to talk about, and we have interviews. I can help you out with that. I think this is cool.
Well, I'm still waiting on you to come set up the cameras in the studio so we can do that there.
Yeah. How many cameras do you guys have?
Well, we've got one big one and a GoPro.
Okay. That's really all you need. I mean, you can actually use your phone as a live stream camera.
Well, I mean, I've got my iPad, Sean's iPad, both of our iPhones.
Yeah.
We paid $4,500 or whatever the hell it was for that big camera, and then the latest and greatest GoPro 10 or 9 or whatever the hell it is.
Man, stuff is getting so expensive recently. I just went to Chipotle yesterday with a student. It was me and him. We each got a burrito and a drink, and it was $47. What the heck?
Yeah, it's getting ridiculous.
Yeah, don't start eggs. $5
man.
dozen eggs.
Okay, let's see if we got any questions. Let's see. Dr. Cola. Man, Dr. Cola's on here. I really need to have... Doc, we need to get it to where we have you on as a guest. That would be so cool. Duke says, David, as a tangent, did Trevor get his props for HOA fee test at the ECC? What is the ECC?
Only if it's preluded by him getting his butt smoked by an 11-year-old on the make or break at Jack Links.
Did he really? That's awesome. Hey, I got whooped in the PSCA by a dude with one arm.
What? Hey, I know who you're talking about. That guy can shoot, dude.
He's the man. He's hilarious, as nice of a guy as you can get, and he's an amazing shooter.
Hey, there's a good question, David. That last one that just came in.
I was just about to read it. Yeah, it says, what % success rate should a shooter have before moving into progressively more difficult targets? I want to, because that is a really good question. What do you guys each think about that?
My honest opinion, and sorry, Sean, I guess I'll take this one first. It was said in the very early stages of our podcast, I forget which guest said it, and it's been said several times since then, that you need to master everything inside of 35 yards. And I've paid close attention to that, like while in a tournament, and I would say that 90% of the targets, well, unless you're on Doug Vine's blue course, 90% of the targets are within 35 yards. So if you master those, and then just get what you can in the big ones, I mean, David, am I wrong here? I mean, you're shooting in the 90s at that point.
Yeah, we'll let Sean go, and then I'll give my opinion.
No, I mean my thoughts mirror Jason's. I mean, I think if you can, it's the easy ones that kill you, right? I mean, buddy is going to struggle with a hard target. Like if you go to any tournament, if you have a couple stations that are super hard, that are set for your AA and your master class shooters, everybody's going to struggle with those, even the AA and the master class guys for the most part. So if you can eliminate missing the easy ones and take that part of your game and polish that to where you're not kicking yourself for dropping 4 5 birds or whatever, long way. So that out in, after that, work on whatever you want, whatever makes you feel comfortable.
The only one thing, real quick, David,
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
When we had Joe Skull on here recently, he made the comment that Zach had dominated the blue course at Jack Links, right? Those are all big targets. And this was last year. And he lost on Joe's easier targets. He dropped some easy targets he shouldn't have dropped, and that's what caused him to win. So I guess that's kind of a little bit of validation to what Sean and I are saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that, so I'll give my opinion now, which is going to be a little bit, it's the same opinion, but filtered through a different perspective. Basically, I think that, the question I'll read again, it was by John Mollier. I hope I'm saying your last name right, because I don't think it's Molliet. But anyways, so John said, what % success rate should a shooter have before moving into progressively more difficult targets? So I'm going to interpret that question as being based around what should my score be before I, in practice, try to work on harder targets. And what I would say is it would depend on what you're defining as harder targets, because I think that, in my personal opinion, I don't really differentiate between harder or easier, because I think that, easier, so to speak, targets can be harder, because easier targets, through the classical definition, would be closer targets. Well, closer targets, they translate to faster movement. Faster movement in your body to connect to a bird that's closer. So, like a bird that covers, if a bird is 15 yards away and going 40 miles per hour, well, that 40 miles per hour is going to be a bigger amount of your field of view than if it's 50 yards away. And so that means it's the exact same target, but your movement needs to be more. And the problem with closer targets is that when we're forced to move faster, we tend to move worse, because poor movement can easily be blended into a redistribution of weight, like leaning, throwing the hands. And if we're shooting shots that are quick, we're going to get beat, and we're going to amp ourselves up more and make bad movement. A perfect example of this at the furthest end of the spectrum would be a quartering bird sitting to the side of you full spring, versus if you walked away, like back from it 20 to 30 yards. When the bird is sitting right next to you, it looks so fast that visually you're going, the visual information you get is going to force your body to respond poorly. So what I like to do is I like to tell my students that it's good to always practice a blend of everything, because everything is hard. Close targets are hard because they allow bad movement, and bad movement, when done quickly, can cause you to miss. Far targets are hard because they force you to have accurate movement in a very small space, in a very slow speed, and if you're only shooting close targets, you're not going to be equipped to be able to shoot far targets very, very slow. So I think it's important to do all of them at the same time, because in all honesty, I don't know if there's anything that's easy. So hopefully that answers that question.
There's a lot coming in there, David, if you want to catch up on a few of them.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so Andy S. Says, can you briefly touch on hold points? There are lots of ways I heard try. I don't know. There are lots of ways something to find the break point in your look or eye point, but it seems hold points are a personal preference. Barry, oh yeah, I didn't know Ricky Marshall hosts a trap podcast.
You didn't know that?
No,
Man, where have you been?
I have. Listen, I didn't even know that I had my own podcast until the other day.
Well, about 30 minutes ago you didn't. It wasn't working.
I just thought I've been talking to my computer for 2 months. Let's see. Trevor has a question. My question is to Jason and why he hates Doug Vine targets. I've heard him talk trash about them multiple times, and I think they're great at Quote Creek. I would say Joe sets boring targets. Just my opinion. Jason, while you answer that and defend yourself from being whooped in the butt by Doug Vine, you better be very careful how you answer this question, because Doug Vine can come just break your door down. So you answer that. I'll read the other ones. Yeah.
No, it's not that I hate it. I don't. And, I mean, to be honest with you, until the U.S. Open last year, I thought Doug Vine's targets were just over the top. Well, now I'd put him down to about an 8 or a 9 compared to what we saw last year at the Open.
Yes.
I don't hate targets. I don't. I think they're big targets. I mean, big targets. The only problem I have with big targets like that, just like you saw the tower, I did the little video clip at Jack Links. The only problem I have with that is there's nowhere to go to really train on those targets. So when you go there, you're just going to have to take what you can get off of those big 120-foot towers. You know, if that's not something that you're used to shooting, you just have to take what you can get and move on. I don't hate his targets. I like Joe's targets. I just, you know, like I said in the podcast, David, with you when we started off on episode 1, I just was hoping for a little bit more creativity, and I don't know what that is or how to do it. You know, I'm just getting into the target setting game. You know, I've just started doing it in the last couple of years, and those guys got way more experience than me. I don't know, Trevor, to answer your question, I don't hate his targets. I don't hate his targets. They're just big targets. I mean, you got to shoot them, right? So,
Sean, what do you think about the targets at Jack Links?
You know, I was at the very last Gator Cup before they moved on to the Jack Links, and you know, Doug was still setting targets even back then. There's a distinct between, you know, Doug and Joe's targets, obviously. The thing that I think sometimes people lose sight of in this sport is that, you know, when you go to a big tournament like the Jack Links or U.S. Open, yes, obviously some of the best shooters in the world are going to be there because of, you know, either the money or the purse, or just because, you know, at the U.S. Open, it's known to draw the best in the country. So I think the thing that people have to keep in mind is there's still people that are new or just getting into the sport, E class, D class, C class, and you don't want to set them so tough on every station to where they go home feeling like they just got whipped, you know what I mean, or they just got up, because you still have to find a good balance of keeping targets fun to where even those guys in ED and C class can still go out there and break a fair share of targets and not feel defeated. Because I know last year, or at the U.S. Open, I know there was quite a few people like that dropped out the first day because I think they just had too much, you know, tough targets. And Rick said anything, but I think as a sport overall, it's not just about the top level guys. I mean, that's what everybody wants to follow, and that's the story that evolved in the Super Squad last year. But there's still an awful lot of people in this sport that do it for fun. They do it for a hobby. So as a target setter, I think you have a responsibility to set targets that are fun for everybody. I know that's a tough thing to ask, but keep it fair, keep it fun, and then we'll keep a lot more people in the sport moving forward. Just my opinion.
Yeah. While you were saying that, Dr. Cola just made a comment, I think probably to what I was talking about with the hard and easy targets. And he's 100% right, and I want to say it so other people can hear if they're not reading the chat. But he said for someone that's occluded, which means that one of your eyes has something in front of it that is obstructing view, and that would happen for the purpose of having misaligned eye dominance in a cyclopean position outside of your handedness. But he's saying for somebody that's using an occlusion approach to fixing eye dominance, like shooting soft, easy targets can teach them how to do it wrong better. So that's very, very true. Like the and not only that, but I'll take what Colo just said and apply it to all people, which is that shooting targets that have two-dimensionally lead that is big enough that looking at the target forces your gun to be in a place inside of your field of view that is outside of the the center ocular part of where your attention is, and as you're increasing your attention on the bird, that radius will decrease. But if you're shooting targets that two-dimensionally are really far separated from the gun, that's really, really good practice for visual discipline and actually like emotional comfortability shooting a bird without having to get two-dimensional validation visually of where the gun is and kind of getting rid of that crutch. You don't need far targets to make it hard. That kind of pulls in a little bit what we're talking about right now with the targets at the jack links, which is that, I just set a target at Blue Rock in Arkansas, and I'm seeing a couple of my students here that are up in that come to Rochester with me. But when I set targets on a tournament, the last 3 or 4 tournaments I've set, I don't think I have a single thing over 35 yards, but it's a ball buster course. If you understand movement, you can make targets hard. And honestly, also, really far targets don't necessarily require a lot of lead. A lot of times, if you throw it so far away, it actually shrinks the two-dimensional space between the target and the gun, and that increases barrel awareness. So all of that is really, really important to understand, that it's actually, if you're shooting targets in practice, only targets that are close and easy to increase your proficiency, you also could be inadvertently teaching yourself to look at the gun, or teaching yourself to be afraid not to see the gun because you never shoot without seeing the gun.
Well, Sean, you know what all this just told me, don't you?
What's that?
I know how we're going to trip David up at the night shooting the prelim. Anything inside of 35 yards is going to have full spring on edge. And everything outside of 35 is going to be a trash can lid with no spring.
That would hit me. But I don't know. I have been practicing a lot. I've been shooting really, really good. So, I think I don't know if you guys can give me a weakness short of like throwing orange rabbits in the grass with bad lighting. I think I'm good.
Oh, here comes excuses.
And those unhittable crows that you threw 2 years ago.
Those were awesome crows. What are you talking about, man?
You put freaking aluminum targets in there for me when I got up there. I know you did. I was 2 stations away. I saw you shut the station down. You guys both went out there, and you're like, "Oh, we got to fill the machine." And then I go up, and I saw you doing math with the calculators, figuring out which targets would be mine to shoot, and you loaded like 8 aluminum birds. 4 in each trap, and I shot them all, 0 the station, but it hit every single one. I saw it. I know your games.
You had the.
You should have just borrowed my color, David. You'd been fine.
No, when you weren't looking, I just put rock salt loads in your pouch. Yeah. So that's all it was.
Oh man, that's funny. So are you guys setting targets for that shoot again?
Oh, I'm sure we will. I mean, I haven't talked to Jake about it, but that's been the Dead Pair Prelim. That's so much fun. We have a ton of fun setting those targets, and every year we've had people that have really loved it. So I don't see why we wouldn't do it again.
It would be cool to do a tournament that's sponsored by our podcast where you guys set a main event and I set a main event.
Well, actually, I haven't even been able to talk to Sean about this because he's been so busy. So I guess I'll drop it now. Had a little chat with Brian Palmer down at Vero Beach, and we're going to do a dead pair tournament down there, like all the courses set by Sean and I.
Oh, that's cool.
So, but
Oh.
I don't see why we couldn't rope you in on it, David.
You don't have to do. I mean, that'll be an opportunity for you guys. I don't want to steal half of that. But we should do something somewhere else. You know, we should. I think if we're gonna do that, we should do it in Ohio because both of us are from the same state. Well, both podcasts, the three of us, are from the same area, and I would want to. You know, I mean, maybe we could do like next year's state championship. We should have like a side event. Well, that's what we should do. We should sponsor a side event at the state championship. That one course is named after your podcast, the other course is named after my podcast. We set the targets respectively on each course, and then then we figure out some cool thing to mix the scores in some way. I don't know. We'll think of something cool. I think that would be cool.
Yeah, no, that would be cool. Trevor just made a comment. Said, "Can I get in on this target setting?" Sure. Start a podcast. You can join.
Yeah. No, Trevor, don't start a podcast. It's way too much work and way too expensive.
I tell you what, that's the one thing, and the two guys on the phone with me here will agree. That's the one thing I can say about the critics. It's where's your microphone?
Yeah.
When they figure out how hard this is to do, they won't last very long. And you see it all the time. There's podcasts that come out and they go away in 6 months. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we say it's a labor of love, and we really mean it.
Yeah,
it doesn't pay the bills, that's for sure.
When I had my student over here this past week, not Curtis, a different one. I haven't released this podcast yet. I recorded it yesterday, I think. What happened was I had to edit a vest. I had to do a vest, build a bear pelt vest on the thing, and then I had to edit the audio in the podcast that we just released with Jason and I. And then we were going to record his podcast. And so I was like, I've got some work to do, and then we can record. You can, if you want, turn the TV on, watch a movie or something. He's like, what do you have to do? I said, well, I just gotta make a vest on my computer, and then I have to edit the audio. I just got to make it sound right, and then I have to publish it. And he's like, well, that's not going to take that long. I said, it's going to take 4 to 6 hours. And he's like, yeah, no way. And he literally sat on the couch for half a day as I had to do. And he was like, I can't believe it takes this long. I was like, yeah. People think it's just like press record and then you press publish and you're done. I mean, it takes a long time.
Oh, you talking about when Curtis was over?
No, it was another one. I don't want to say his name yet because I'm going to release a podcast with him. It's a awesome pod. I mean, I'll say his name is Dawson Palmer. He's a 16-year-old student of mine who you'll quickly realize when you listen to the podcast that because it's not a video podcast, you can't see him. You'll think I'm talking to a 35-year-old.
Is this the guy you talked about on the podcast that you and I recorded? The kid?
I don't know.
I think we're talking about the same person here. I cannot wait to see this kid shoot.
What? Maybe I did. I don't remember. What did I say on yours?
Oh my god! Well, it comes out tomorrow. You'll have to listen to it.
My camera is going crazy right now. There we go.
Hey, Sean. Speaking of vests, weren't we supposed to have somebody designing a dead pair of vests? Who was that? Do you remember who that was?
I heard something about it, but I'm not going to go into it.
Well, I finally figured out, literally as of maybe it was barely a week ago, I finally got some new information on how to design it. So now I actually can make the vest. I haven't even made any of my. I don't even have a pro model for bear pelt yet, and I was the first person to shoot for them. But it'll be, and actually if you don't believe me, I can show you right now. I actually did start. I turn some of your logos into vector files and stuff. Whoa, chat just went really crazy right now.
Just now catching up with it, or what?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Let's see. What else? Did we miss any other questions, Jason? I know you're looking.
Trevor still wants in on the target setting.
Oh, he says that we need a real target setter. Man,
Yeah.
I take that personally.
Well, I mean, this coming from a guy that can't hit all of them. Oh, wait, is that out loud? Was this on mute? Sorry. Just kidding, Trevor. I love you, buddy.
What are some tournaments you guys are going to coming up? You gonna be at the Open?
I'm not. That's from here. That's a jag and a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
I'm signed up for
No.
the.
Gonna go to the.
What's that, Sean? Go ahead, Sean.
No, you go ahead.
I'll be at the Southeast, the Northeast, the North Central, and obviously the Nationals. Ohio State. I don't know if we're doing Indiana State or not yet. I don't know. Of course, the big shoots around here, obviously.
Yeah. I'm excited for the state shoot.
I can't believe you're actually showing up this year. I'm more impressed on that, man.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I'm excited to see how many people we get this year.
Yeah. No, I said, David, I'm impressed you're showing up for the state shoot this year. I'm more impressed about that than anything.
Well, I normally always do, except for when they overbook the state shoot with the World Championship in Europe. That happens a lot.
Well, since you're coming, you're gonna need to come hang out the tent.
Oh, for sure.
The Dead Prayer tent. You know about that, right?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But say it. Let everyone know.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't heard, Sean and I are setting up the Dead Prayer tent up at the pavilion. Friday and Saturday night, we're going to be hanging out, having a beer if you're old enough to have one. Come hang out, and then a lot of the people that's been on the show are going to be there. I don't want to name everybody just yet, because the truth is we're still, 5 months, 6 months out from that shoot. But I know for a fact, I can say Chad Roberts will be there. Joe Skull's going to stop by. David's going to be there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Christian Crawford's going to be there. There's a few more, but I'm waiting to throw the names out there. Our sponsors are kicking in a few things. I know Fiocchi's going to throw in some goodies. I haven't talked to all of them yet, so I don't want to speak for all of them. But, we're definitely going to have a cool time hanging out up there at the pavilion.
I was talking to everybody at Cardinal Center, and I'm actually going to have a tent set up right directly in front of your tent, and it's going to be a little bit bigger, and I'm going to have a backdrop.
David, with your head, all you got to do is stand in front of the tent.
Yeah. Oh man.
No, I think it'll be fun though. I mean, how cool, you know?
Yeah, that is going to be really cool. It's like at the World Championships over in Europe, the Game Board always does this thing. They call it Game Board Village. And it is one of the coolest things about the vendors at the World Championship, because they have they just have this beautiful seating area set out, and you go and everyone hangs out, and they have it's so far removed from what you see over here from anybody. I mean, it's roped off, and there's tables with tablecloths and food on the tables, and they have branded beers and stuff. You guys should get like, you know what you should do? This would be cool if you want some beers. It would just be fun because I know people would love it. Have you guys ever heard of? It's up north where I grew up. It's called the Brew Kettle. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
I've heard of it. Sean, have you been there?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yes.
I've heard of it. Never been there.
So you guys should try to book a thing at the Brew Kettle, and because what you do there is you go and you totally get to from scratch make your own beer, and you label it and everything, and so you could literally have Dead Pair Podcast beer and in beautiful glass bottles, and then have it there at the tent for everybody. That would be cool.
That would be cool.
My dad does that all the time, and it's cool. He's an orthodontist, and he did one that was kind of my favorite one he ever did. I think he called it Bad Bite Beer or something like that.
Well, I'm really excited about what we got coming up the pipe. I'm just sorry I can't say any more than that. I'm teasing everybody, but Sean and I have stepped into something that I think everybody's going to enjoy. It's going to be a lot of fun, and everybody will want it. Trust me. But David, why don't you catch up on a few questions here? You got a ton of them coming in.
Well, it looks a lot like just conversation. I don't know about questions too much. Let's see. It doesn't look like
actually
really...
David King's got a good question here.
Where is it? Oh, okay. Says Jason, Sean, and him being Fiocchi shooters. How would I compare Fiocchi to you guys? The podcast is Fiocchi for you guys, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to make sure I didn't falsely say that.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, he wants to know how the Fiocchi compares to Game Board. Both great brands, and what load do y'all shoot? I'll give my opinion first. First of all, we're shooting little rhinos. And before we had Game Board, Sean and I were both shooting little rhinos to begin with. So it was kind of like stepping back into, something you had done before. They're both excellent shells. I mean, the white gold and the little rhinos, the way they hit targets is extremely comparable. I mean, it'd have to take somebody with some kind of expensive slow-mo camera to tell if there was any difference in the breaks. I think the little rhinos are a little softer, but that's natural because they're 1,250 feet per second 1-ounce versus the white golds that are 1,300. I haven't shot the new rose gold that is supposed to be the same load, the 1,250 1-ounce. But, I don't get me wrong, I love shooting the white golds. Never had a problem with them. Now we're on to Fiocchi, and we're shooting little rhinos, and I absolutely love them too. I mean, seriously, you can't go wrong with either, in my opinion.
What him said.
You see what I deal with every week?
I was waiting to hear what he was going to say, and then I was going to say something complimentary, but I'll just if I can get my dang camera to work. I'll just talk about the Game Boy loads. So I don't know if I want to go into that. I'll put it this way. The Game Boy loads are what I really like about Game Boy loads is that the components that they have. I'm trying to find a way to say this and be nice to everybody, but I don't. It's not.
David, just say it.
I shouldn't answer that question.
Just say it, David.
I don't want to be insulting. Basically, put it this way.
Okay, Listen, I won't say anything as long as you don't flap your gums about something that comes out of a Perazzi barrel being better. Then I'll leave you alone.
I I'll just say I believe. So every company that I associate myself with, product wise, I can thankfully say that I of of all of the pros that shoot, I actually hold at a very high regard the fact that I probably have about the least amount of sponsors. And the reason why is because I have never asked for a sponsorship. And uh, I will gladly pay for something if that company doesn't ask me for a sponsorship, or it doesn't ask me to sponsor me. Um, and obviously, what I'm saying is all personal opinion. Like, I totally, I mean, I'll also throw out there, Fiocchi was my first sponsor ever. When I was, I think 11, 10 or 11 years old, they sponsored me. And so, um, I don't think that they're a bad shell at all. They also sponsored the PSCA. But, ammunition, there's ballistics that you can compare. There's perceived experience that you can compare. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. I really, really love the people at Game Bar. I love the approach they take to marketing, like the new Onyx load. Literally, the approach behind that, the purpose behind that was we're a very small company, and everybody else that has to try to put a new product on the market has to go through boards and voting and redistribution of finances, and we're just so quick to make decisions because we're small. Let's just make something that doesn't make any sense to make. That's like the most expensive, highest quality load that you can possibly make, because it doesn't make sense for a big company to make it, and it's not possible to get anything that high quality for anyone else. And it's literally the best load ever made. I mean, it's ridiculous how good the quality of that load is, and I love that approach to marketing. It's like, let's create a halo product that's better than anything, and is limited quantity, and make people want it because it looks cool, it shoots good, all that kind of stuff. I love the branding, I love the product, I love the people, and I also recognize that other people can disagree with me, and I will happily agree with the fact that they can disagree. So I think that's cool. That's what I'll say.
I will say this: both premium loads from both the companies we just talked about make a show better than I can shoot.
Valid. Sean, on the other hand, though, doesn't have
That's
that problem.
Hey, Shrek, you're being awful quiet over there.
I'm just sitting back and listening to all the humorous comments. I just kind of sit back and take it all in.
Oh, here's a
No, I think both shells are.
Here's a cool question. It says, "Are there any really successful shooters who started shooting in their 30s or 40s?"
That is a good question.
I guess you have to define what is successful. Like world champion, national champion. What are we talking about?
I mean, I would just say any person you consider to be a professional. I mean, David King is here talking. I think David, tell us how long you've been shooting. It hasn't been that long, but I would say the vast majority of them, like I would say 90 to 95% of them started in their 30s or 40s. Some even later. I mean, it's a much shorter list to say who started when they were a kid. I would say that list would be myself, um, Joe Finizzi, Todd Hitch, Tom C., Anthony Matarese, Brad Kidd, Zach Kinebaum, Corey Cruz. I feel like I'm missing one, but maybe not. But everybody else.
Well, here's one. How old was Chad when he finally got in the game?
I think he was in his 30s or 40s.
I think he was in
Yeah, I
his
mean, and
30s.
Chad's a great shooter.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like most people but the reality of it is because it's kind of like the sport is not that old, you
The
know.
sport, yeah, that's a young sport. Um, I would like to make a quick comment. Barry Sands said here, well said, Jason. Shot my first registered shoot last fall at M&M. Had a blast shooting a 55 on the K Cup. You know what, dude? Honestly, this is something we don't. We talk about the pros. We talk about the people at the top of the game and targets and all that. There's not enough said. I mean, this guy went out and had a blast and enjoyed the game. I love seeing that or love hearing about that just as much as Zach winning the national championship. You know
Well,
what I mean?
I was reading a comment when you were talking. Who were you talking about, Jason?
Barry Sands.
Oh,
Read that comment.
just trap talk from the back fence.
No. You don't see that comment?
No.
He said, well said, Jason. I shot my first registered shoot last fall at M&M. Had a blast shooting a 55 on the K Cup. I mean,
Oh, I
to
see.
me, the guy going out and having fun, shooting his first tournament, I mean, to me, I like hearing those stories as much as I do the guys at the top that won, the Nationals or the Worlds or whatever. Yeah, that stuff's, of course it's impressive and of course it's important, but it's neat for me. The guy took up shooting. He shot his first tournament. He only shot a 55, but he had a blast the whole time. That's the kind of stuff that pushes Sean and I. I mean, it really is. I mean, we say it all the time on the podcast, but people are probably sick of hearing it. But I mean it. That's our motivation right there. I mean, Sean, am I speaking out of place here?
No, not at all. I mean, just speaking about the Jack Links, I mean, I can't remember how many people came up to us and said, I'm shooting this sport because of you guys, or I'm shooting my first, or I'm shooting registered tournaments because of you guys. And that's the whole reason we started our podcast to begin with.
Yeah, I like. So Trevor said that he disagrees. If you look at the list, everybody started before their 30s, but you're looking at the open list. Like, if you go to the All-American teams and understand how the All-American teams work, if you make the veteran team and the open team, they put you in the veteran team. So you're not going to get anybody that started after the age of 30 on the open team because by default, they force them into veteran. So if you look at the veteran team, I'm going to read the list off. Wendell Cherry, he started when he was 40 or 30 something. William Walton, over 30. Richard Cheek, over 30. Joe Carey, over 30. Will Fennell, over 30. Steve Lundeen, over 30. Todd Simmons, over 30. Andy Duffy, over 30. Ron Miracle, I don't know about him. David, you might know. John Monroe, over 30. I mean, this whole list, there's not someone here that started younger than 30.
Yeah, but I think that goes back to your comment earlier, David, about the sport being young. I think that dynamic over time. I think that number will continue to drop, the amount of people that started before they were 30. Or no, excuse me. The number of people that started shooting before they were 30, that number will increase. Don't you agree? Because the sport is so young.
Yeah, like I would say, yeah, I mean, for sure. Eventually, everybody on the list is going to be someone that started when they were a kid. I mean, if you look at the pro tour in golf right now, there's not a single person that didn't start when they were like 6. You're not going to make it on the PGA Tour if you start when you're my age. But it's just just a layer over of the game. And like the sport's been around for you'd say 45, maybe 50 years. But when it's been around since you could basically be a professional in the sport, it hasn't been that long. But I also I was just talking to Wendell on the phone about this. We were talking about like everyone always talks about these people that get really hot really fast and they kind of think they're like world beaters. um, and gonna light the world on fire and be the next George Digweed, and then they just disappear after 3 to 4 years. You can't really assess any of the kids yet because the difference in the game, in terms of assessing the kids that are in the game now for whether they will be here in 10 to 15 years still, it's hard to say because and when I say be here, I mean like competitive and winning things because it's just to go from being young and in college and having the parents drive you and pay for things and and all that kind of stuff. Like if your parents are still showing up to tournaments to help you at the tournament, we don't know yet if you're going to be at the top of the game in 15 years.
Any other questions on there, guys?
Yeah, David King said he was 39. Oh, I didn't know Ron Marico had a club when in the early 90s. That's cool. Yeah, Bobby Fowler too. Oh, look at this. It's got John Darnell says my first bigger shoot was the Dead Pair prelim last year and was squatted with Dustin who won it, and I shot like crap but had a blast watching him and had a great time.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Jack Walker wants me to adopt him. Jack, it's good to see you here. Any other cool questions? Did I miss anything? I tend to go on rants on my podcast.
Really? We never knew that.
Well, it's different because when I'm producing my own content, I don't care if I piss people off. What do you?
Have you? Go ahead, Dave.
No, go ahead.
No.
I insist. I'm the host. You have to listen to me.
I know how you are, so I think I already know the answer to this. But at any one point, like clear back, maybe when you started behind the break, were you worried about what you said because you were going to make somebody mad, or maybe somebody wouldn't like that, or whatever? Or have you always just been like, whatever, dude, I'm going to say what I'm going to say?
So like for example, sometimes I try to be more political if I'm a guest, like on your podcast. Like what I just said about kids shooting, I would not say on your podcast because that could be interpreted as being discouraging to you shooting when it's not. I'm just trying to be educational and saying that, hey, you haven't yet learned to compete a whole match by yourself and deal with all the stressors that come with that. We don't know if you can do that yet. So, I try to be a little bit more political on other forms of media, but no, I've never been somebody that cared. Even like in my, sorry, I have it. Is somebody echoing some? Maybe someone's on.
Oh,
there we go. That's better.
sorry, I didn't mute my phone.
Oh, you're good. But basically, like, for my, even with my sponsors, like with Parazzi or Game Bore or Permatic and stuff, I'm different than them. I'm just a different person. I don't like being part of the mold. I have it's impossible for me to lie about something to maintain the status quo. If I think, if I believe something and I know it's going to cause a problem for me to say it, it's almost like makes me want to say it more.
Yeah.
It's like a mental disease or something. I don't know. But no, I don't really care at all what people think, but for the purpose of this, that I don't want people to listen to what I have to say because the people that I want to pay attention to me are the people that I want them to know that they can believe everything I say. And that's why I say it, I am the way that I am, because, I never want to be the guy that you don't know if he's trying to soften blows of things or what, because I'm an educator and a teacher, and my job is not to say the thing that makes you feel good. It's to say the thing that makes you better. And sometimes that doesn't always feel good. But I think that's a good question.
Yeah,
So
hard truth.
So now what were you going to ask me? Or is that thought gone?
Yeah, you expect me to know after answering a question? I thought you knew me better.
See, I knew this was coming, Sean. Do you remember the first time he sat down in the studio with us and he's like, wait, you guys take notes? You guys write stuff down? What are you doing over there? He looked up
yeah.
like, what is all, man, you guys playing stuff? I'm like, oh my God.
Hey, I'll be fair, or to be fair, well, for things that I don't know, I have to take notes. But a lot of it's like being a guest on your podcast. I don't have to bring notes because it's like that's what it'd be like, Sean, if I were to ask you about the inner workings of your business, you wouldn't have to read notes, And Jason, probably anything I talk to you, you're gonna have to bring notes. But if no, but like Jason, a perfect example would be like if I were to sit down and talk to you about how to, if we were to have a conversation about, riding a dirt bike, racing a dirt bike, your explanation to my questions is going to be you reliving that experience to communicate it and explain. And if you read notes, it won't be as good. I think that's a fair explanation.
Really, Sean? I mean, really?
I'm staying out of this one.
What's the question?
No, who was just pouring the water in the cup? He does this stuff.
Oh, that was me.
My wife has to edit him dropping ice into his glass by right in the middle of the podcast.
Well, this is David's podcast. This is David's podcast.
I don't do
We're allowed to
editing.
do this.
Yeah.
I saw him.
I
drink
didn't
it.
hear any noise.
Jason's just sensitive.
He posts questions that I can't read, and he hears noises nobody else can hear. I don't know. I don't know what's wrong with him.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Well,
He can be a bit high strung.
I shouldn't have said anything about Trevor getting his butt by an 11-year-old because he's giving me a hell of a time here in the chat room.
Yeah, he is. But that's the way this is, though. Everyone just gives you crap. But that's because that's the best way to know that someone likes you.
Sean, you got a question from Trevor. He wants your thoughts on moving to a new gun.
Well, I'll let you know here because I'm going to be moving to that new Kohler here very soon. As soon as we get that all worked out.
So I'm assuming you guys
I mean,
announced
I
that.
went. Yeah, we've already
cool.
announced that deal. But originally I shot for years. I shot a Beretta 302 Auto, which is the great grandfather of the A400, and then I briefly moved to a 687, which was my first over under, and then after shooting that for about a year and a half after that DT11. So each time I moved to a new gun, it took time to learn it to the point where I felt like it was almost a natural extension of me. And I think that anybody that gets to a new gun, people feel like a new gun solves problems. It can to a certain degree, especially if you get the fit right and actually do the practice that you need to, but it takes time. So, I mean, David, I don't know, how many thousands of rounds do you think you would take to get away from your Protzy and go to something different?
Well, real quick, I have to say, Nate just said, did someone just flush? And then Eric said the flush you heard was Jason's shooting. Oh my God. That was the best
Oh.
one. That was the best one. Okay, but anyways, yeah. Sorry to get distracted, but I couldn't not say that. But yeah, I mean, switching to a new gun is not easy, and the better you are with the gun that you have, or the more attuned that you are with it. Basically, I mean, I can speak from a neurological sense. The reprogramming the communication neurologically between your central pattern generators and your lower motor neurons is what needs to happen, because you have to learn to move your body in a different way. And even if you're doing the same mechanical, or I should say, doing the same physical movements, you're now doing them with a differently balanced gun, or a differently distributed weight in between your hands, and possibly a different fit. And so it basically just takes very conscious practice to overwrite that feedback, the proprioceptive control of your body, in order for it to be non-conscious again. And I would say there's no set number to put on it. The more consciously you're controlling your movement while relearning the gun, the quicker that you will learn it. But it would take me a very long time.
David, Sophie's got a good question that's kind of like that. She's talking about a custom stock. She wants to know, how long would you give yourself to adjust to a new custom stock? And only you can answer that, because John and I don't have custom stocks.
You guys, well, you, okay, yeah, I guess I don't know what I'm thinking about. But to adjust to a custom stock, I would say I would say adjusting to a custom stock, you can take the word custom out, because a lot of people think that if it's a custom, I've heard this so many times, that if you get a custom stock that's fit to you, or if you get a new gun that's fit to you, you shouldn't have a break-in period, and it should immediately start working for you. And if anybody tells you that, they're, for lack of better terms, and I know I get demonetized every time I cuss on my podcast, but they're so full of shit if they say that. That is such bullshit. Because all that's going to do, if someone tells you that, then it's going to completely ruin your trust and faith in that gun. And psychologically, that is so detrimental to you being able to learn it, because you'll never trust it. You'll always be paying attention to the gun, and you'll get set in a process where you'll be so consciously attentive to where the gun is, and my fit's not right, or I gotta change this, I gotta change that, I see a different position in the barrel, whatever it is, and you'll just never will learn it. So it doesn't matter if it's custom or not custom. It's just different or new. And when it's different or new, it can take, for me when I got a new gun or a new stock, I would say 80% of the newness was gone in one day, and I shot 750 rounds in that afternoon. And then the next 10% was gone. I would say in the next week of shooting about a flat a day, and then the last 10%, it's been a year and it still doesn't feel right. So, and that's, take that with a grain of salt, because I'm also the most hyper analytical person that you can think of. So I'm gonna notice very subtle differences that most people don't, because my movement is exactly the same every time. So I'm gonna feel and see a difference of 1 millimeter on my gun, whereas most people, their inconsistency in their movement is greater than 1 millimeter, so they don't have to worry about that last 10%. So it can take anywhere from, if you know what to pay attention to when you're relearning it, it can take you a day to get 90% and a week to get the next 10%. Or if you don't know how to do that, it can take you a couple months and a few thousand rounds. But I would say the best thing for you to do is listen to season 1, or series 1, episode 3 of my podcast, where I talk about basically using the neurology to relearn something. And if you take that approach to what you're doing, you'll learn it as fast as possible.
David, I completely understand everything you just said, and obviously you have more knowledge than anybody listening to this or watching this. But I just have a hard time believing it when you shoot 90% of your rounds with the gun upside down over your head that the stock takes a freaking right than it used to. Now, or when you try to actually shoot and your head's still 18 inches off the cone. So
Yes. Well, what? That's a very valid point. For me, well, I know that you're joking, but for me, where it gets me changing guns is not that it goes to a different place, because you're right. I can shoot the gun anywhere, and God dang, this freaking artificial intelligence for the autofocus is so frustrating. The gun can be anywhere, and I still have success with breaking the bird. But what pulls me out of that successful result is that when I finish the mount, it feels different, and the different feeling cues my attention to the fact that it's different, and then I look and pay attention to the gun. So in that respect, it's kind of easier for me to shoot from the hip on a new stock, because I don't feel the difference in my shoulder and in my face and the plane and angle of the gun, and that's why that happens.
yeah, I was just joking, but then that does make total sense though.
Yeah.
Um, Todd asked how long it took for me to get used to my color. We'll leave my first color out of it because I thought it was really cool to have a extension ladder bolted to the top of your gun, and so we'll leave that out of the equation, the high rib. But the new Max Light that I have, it's actually not a fair question either. I had somebody locally adjust my comb. It was wrong. Chad came to Ohio for the Ohio State shoot that year, adjusted it. It was awesome. Loved it. David decided he wanted me to shoot proprioception, so he cranked the stock way up and over. And then Chad's like, oh my goodness, what has he got going on? And then he took it back down, and then I went to see Jim Greenwood at the Nationals, and he's like, what are you doing? So needless to say, the screws on my comb are kind of, the threads are stripped, but no, it's once I got the sweet spot, it really just feels at home. I mean, it's everything that's between the ears here is the problem now. So
Yeah. I've been going through. I can show you. I'm gonna pull it up. Hold on. Oh, talk amongst yourself. I'll be back in like 1 minute.
Sean,
Standard David.
You see any of the questions here, Sean? Sean, can you see any of the questions?
I'm looking at it right now. I guess the other conversation we could have is if you're changing guns, while it may not make a big difference if everything's being equal, what if you have to move from like a mid rib or a, it's probably got some time.
Yeah, first off, I'm definitely gonna go back. I'm gonna mark the time on this and go back and listen to what you just said about me, because I know you said something while I was gone, but no, yeah, sure. But yeah, I mean, I literally have my stock and forend off of my gun right now because I'm messing around with gun fit. This is a year old, so I haven't changed it since I got it a year ago, but it still feels weird to me. So yeah, I take very seriously the fact that being a coach, I can't tell you how many students I have seen who have been like mentally, psychologically ruined because somebody has told them that it shouldn't take very long for them to get used to a stock, and they're having problems. And so then it's not that it it's not that it takes forever to get used to a stock, but if you tell somebody that it shouldn't take any time to get used to a custom stock, then that sets them down a road that every time they're experiencing something that doesn't feel right, they start to doubt their equipment, and that becomes an everlasting problem. That's what the problem is.
So I went and got my gun because Drew Hammond said, "What did Jim change about your stock, Jason?" So, and then Trevor also said that you don't need to adjust your stock to shoot proprioception. So, David, I'm going to show them what you changed and what Jim changed, and maybe you can explain from there.
Yeah.
So, I guess the best way to do this would be just to take the barrel off. And so everybody, if I get grease on this couch, my wife's going to kill me.
Oh, boy.
All right, so I better put that on the floor. So everybody can see my stock and see where the comb is. And you're looking at the back of it here. You can see how, I get it in line with the camera. You can see how the stock is over a little bit. So initially, the person that set my gun up had the comb rolled over this way, and what was happening is I was rolling my head over to get in line with the barrel. So Chad moved the comb over so it fit my face, and then it was perfect. Then I was lined up. What David did was had me raise the comb, and David, you can explain why, for shooting proprioception. Chad took it back down, and then what Jim Greenwood did was kind of put it in the middle of those two. But as far as the left to right, he left it the same so that when I'm in the gun, my right eye is just because I'm an R2L2, it's just a little bit off. David, you can talk about that, but he got it to where now it's the sweet spot, in my opinion.
Yeah. I actually, the question that, and hey, JJ, what's up? Yeah, pretty much I've been out in the field swapping things around, trying to figure stuff out. But anyways, Trevor just asked a question that goes hand in hand with what you just brought up. So I'm going to answer his question, then talk about that. So he says, David, do you feel like some people can adjust quicker than others based on shooting style and personality type? The real answer, and Trevor is also correct when he talks about proprioceptive movement doesn't rely on gun fit. The answer to gun fit is that it's irrelevant. Gun fit doesn't matter if you have good movement. But the problem is that it's psychologically impossible for 100% of shooters to do this correctly, visually correctly, all the time. And that is move purely proprioceptively. Proprioceptive movement is movement that does not rely on a conscious decision to put the gun in a place that you're paying attention to. So if I'm not moving the gun proprioceptively, then that means I'm using my visual reference of the place that my eye or cyclopean position is in relation to my gun to say that's where my gun is three-dimensionally, because I'm seeing it. We see in 3 dimensions, but we look at the space between where the gun is and where the target is two-dimensionally, because we just see the space horizontally and vertically. So you're seeing this two-dimensional reference of the gun and the target, and you say, okay, it requires this much over and that much underneath. I'll put the gun right there. That is non-proprioceptive placement and movement of the gun. Proprioceptive placement and movement of the gun is basically the complete opposite of that, where you don't know and it's all feeling based. And if you want me to go through a really good explanation of what it means to feel lead or feel a target as opposed to see lead, then I'm gonna give you a cliffhanger to listen to the most recent episodes I did with Curtis Dunbar, because I go in and talk about it for about 15 minutes, and it's the best explanation I've ever done, and I don't want to waste the time to give you a worse explanation right now. Basically what ends up happening is that if you if you're somebody who errs more on the spectrum of being very visually conscious, two-dimensionally, in the placement of your gun for the shots that you take, then gun fit matters more to you. If you are somebody that does not rely on that to place the gun, where you can move using proprioceptive feedback of your body and a very good connection of your vision, using the center ocular placement of your vision on the target, but additionally attaching your conscious attention to the target, because you need conscious attention to execute smooth pursuit movement as opposed to saccadic movement, because they use two different neurological pathways to control the same muscle. One requires conscious attention, the other one does not. So if that's the way you shoot, then gun fit won't matter. My approach to solving eye dominance issues, a misalignment of the cyclopean position to the handedness of the shot, is to teach people how to move the gun physically in a way that simulates proprioceptive movement, so that we can attach conscious attention to the target and use physical mechanics that don't allow you to get into the gun until the moment that you pull the trigger. So that way you don't have to rely on a heightened level of visual discipline to fight wanting to see the gun, because the mechanics that I teach don't allow you to see the gun where it is when it's mounted, because the second that you mount the gun, you pull the trigger. But it's more complicated than that, because you're learning to move the gun with proprioceptive feedback in a ratio of speed with the target and your body in a geometrical sense, where everything is a perfect ratio. Sounds way harder to explain than it is to execute. But if you use that mechanical approach to shooting, then you can believe in that, then gun fit won't matter, and neither will eye dominance. If you don't do that, then gun fit will matter, and so will eye dominance. So the problem is that every coach that you go to, and every stock fitter that you go to, and every person that you ask their opinion on is going to say, you need this gun fit, you need that gun fit, you have that eye dominance problem, you need to be fit here. Oh no, you have that eye dominance problem, you actually need to be here, fit here, that guy's wrong, this guy's wrong. It's so complicated and confusing, but the real approach is that they all work, as long as you pick one and say to everybody else, shut the hell up, I don't want to listen to you, because yeah, I know you can be right, but I don't want conflicting ideas in my approach that are going to give me doubt in one approach, and so then I might switch to the other, because you need connectedness and synergy between your gun fit and your mechanical approach and your visual approach and your psychological approach. Those four things need to align for the whole system to work, and if they don't, if you have a combination of different ones, you'll always have problems throughout the whole time. So like for Jason, what happened was when you talked to me on the phone, and we set the whole thing up, then if he wanted to continue down that path, he needed to not listen to Chad, and he needed to not listen to Greenwood, and he needed to stick with that, learn those mechanics, and stay with them forever. Or when he listened to Chad, that would have hit whatever his mechanical approach would have been. I wasn't there for that. Then if he liked that better, he would say, okay, I don't want to listen to David, I want to listen to Chad, then we only do that. But Jason, what happened that is hard for you now is that you have three opinions, and it becomes confusing. But that's basically the long explanation of it, and it sucks. And eye dominance is, for me, a very, very fun thing to teach, because it's so complicated to figure out. But once you figure it out for that person, if you can get them to commit to something, then it becomes a fun process of learning that person, the way they think, the way they see, the way they move, and blending it all together.
David, so Dr. Colos chiming in here, and this is pretty cool. Dr. Colo, I will say that you had me put my thumb up, and to be honest with you, I don't even know where the heck the camera's at on this iPad, so that's part of the problem. I think it's behind. I know where it's at on the back, but I've got the screen facing me. But David, tell Dr. Colo about the eye test you did with me when you discovered that I was an R2L2, when I thought all along that I was just strictly right eye dominant. But tell Dr. Colo, well, tell everybody about that and what happened.
What did I don't remember off the top of my head what I thought that you were.
So we were talking on the phone one day, and it was in relation to gun fit and all this other stuff. And I told you that I had set up a great big teal on my 5-stand here in the driveway. And when I got back to like 40, 45 yards, I had a hell of a time hitting it. And I said, the funny thing was I closed my left eye and I dirtballed the target every time. And you're like, do you want to do an eye test? So you had me set up my phone, and you'd have me raise my right hand, my thumb up to the camera, and then I did my left hand, and you determined that I was R2L2, and that's what brought on the stock change. So, I'll let you explain from there, because you and Dr. Cole know more about this than I'll ever understand. So,
yeah, let me catch up on the comments, because I didn't. For me to give an explanation like I just did, I have to just totally block out everything else that I need to pay attention to. So I need to catch up. She's saying that you look like an R2L2. Jack. Jason, stay right where you are. Look right at the center of the lens of whatever camera you have there, and bring your left thumb to the camera proprioception. David, you see what Jason did with his left hand? I didn't see that. Dang. L3. Okay, Jason, do that again, so I can see.
Well, I need to see where the camera's at on this thing. Okay, it's right there. Okay.
Yeah.
You see, with this case that I have on my iPad, I can't see where okay, now I know where it's at. All right. And so Dr. Cola wants me to bring my left hand up.
Yeah, start with your left.
My left thumb. Did that help, or did I do it right?
It's hard to see because the camera's close to your thumb. The best way to do it would be if you won't be able to simulate it good. Oh, that's not bad. Yeah. Looks like an L. It's either a L2 or a L3. It's hard to tell with you ideally would want to be further away so we could see.
Do I need to take my glasses off? Of course, then I can't see crap on this thing. So
yeah, no, it's just because of the situation of the camera. Like, it's like if I do, it's going to be hard to tell. But. Yeah, I agree, Doc. It looks like an R2L2. But yeah, Jason, could you mute your thing so I can? I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's my fault because I can't pay attention like that. It's crazy how much that shuts my brain off when I talk and I hear a lag in what I just say. I'm like, I turn into an idiot.
I have the same problem. My wife walked by a minute ago, and I went.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so now that we now that we say if we're gonna say that you're L2 R2, what was the thing that you wanted me to talk about?
Well, I just wanted you to tell everybody how you found that and how much it changed my shoot. I mean, I had to work hard for. Well, I'm still working to overcome it, and that was over a year ago.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, basically the way that I found it, I mean, I this is really cool to me that Dr. Colo is on this live because, I mean, I literally have to say that there are three people to me that have influenced my own shooting and my own coaching more than anybody else. I'm trying to think if I can think I don't think there's really any other person that's even in the equation at even a fraction of a percent. But it's Wendell, Dr. Colo, and Dr. Andrew Huberman. But the Andrew Huberman thing hasn't really influenced my mechanics at all. It's just from him I have learned a little bit of neurology to help me understand through the way that I like to understand psychology, which is a more I don't like to me, I don't like the sports psychology approach to understanding what your body physiologically goes through during competition. I like the neurological explanation because it helps me understand what I'm doing. But the two people that have influenced my mechanics and my shooting, so everybody knows Wendell, but also Dr. Colo, because what Dr. Colo, the information that I have learned from him about eye dominance actually made me have like an aha moment in the middle of a lesson while I had him on the phone with a student of mine, where his explanation to me in teaching me at that moment how to assess a situation with my student made me think like, oh, now I understand the connectedness between the mechanics, the eyes, and the brain. And so the eye dominance test that I did with you was the one that I learned from Dr. Colo, and the terminology of L2 R2 comes from Dr. Colo. And essentially what we're assessing is that it's not, you don't assign eye dominance anymore. I don't, at least, of just the binary example of left eye dominant or right eye dominant, or people say center eye dominant. That doesn't give you a very good explanation of anything, and it's also so many of the other tests that you can do to assess eye dominance result in a binary option. In fact, most of the tests don't even allow you to assess if somebody is centrally eye dominant, which isn't even a thing. Well, it is a thing, but it's like I would say it's a regression of the knowledge that we have right now to think that there's only left, right, or center. What Dr. Colo has, what I've learned from him is this whole cyclopean position thing, which essentially is, a singular position that your brain interprets both images from the eyes into one image, and that's your reference point for the image that you see. And so and the reason why that's important is that if we assess where your cyclopean position is in a rough placement in these 5 positions, then that's kind of like the starting point for where we can make the assessment of the approach that we need to take for your gun fit, for the mechanics, for the way that you're going to approach doing whatever you want to do with your eyes. And that's basically step 1 of all of that before you even get to have a conversation with the person that you're teaching, is you need to assess where the cyclopean position is. And that's what we did with you, Jason, because with that, what I've found through my own teaching, and I mean, this is why I want to have Colo on the podcast, because I mean, there are times where I'd have a lesson and I'd call him and be like, "You're not going to believe this. It was so cool." And then we would just nerd out for 2 hours on the phone talking about things and going back and forth and learning together on this is what I got on these tests and this is what I tried mechanically and these were the results. What do you think? Oh, I think this. Try that next time. Okay, then we would just go back and forth so much that it's really through a scientific method of experimentation a lot that I kind of with him figured out some weird stuff about gun fit. So that's what I did with you, is when I assessed your cyclopean position and I assessed how far away that was from being R1, L1, and then based off of that, I made it a deduction on how far outside of center ocular I wanted to fit your gun. So that way, if you passed the threshold of conscious attention on the bird of 50%, so if once you got to the point where more than 50% of your attention was on the target, not just your vision, but your attention was on the target, that the barrel would become not inside of your attention anymore. And based off of the fact that I thought you were R2L2, I kind of made the assessment that, we could probably go about like 1 to 2 centimeters vertically below your pupil, which would put the end of the gun in a specific radius outside of center ocular that I thought would lower your barrel awareness when you got past that threshold of conscious attentiveness on the target. So that way it would help you shoot more proprioceptively. But the only problem with that is at any moment in the shot, if you doubt it, then you will consciously decide to see the gun, and that gets you back outside of that threshold again of being less than 50% consciously attentive to the target, and then you de-titrate your attention on the target, and then it doesn't work again. You'll shoot over because you'll aim, but you'll shoot over and off, left or right.
Yeah, I think where I struggled was with anything where you had a massive amount of barrel awareness, whether that be, something that was incoming or outgoing, I guess would be a lack of a better term for that. That's where, because of the way you had adjusted it, I had to float the hell out of a target. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's so by the definition of saying that we have to float the target, that would by definition make it not work. Because if we're consciously being attentive to floating the target, if that's our filter for what's happening, then that means you're consciously accepting the fact that you're seeing the gun in a lower spot than you need to be, which means you're paying attention to where the gun is, which also means that fix won't work for your problem.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and as far as cast and all that, the cone left to right never moved from where you set it. It's just the height of it is what Chad and Jim Greenwood changed.
Yeah, I would say that they made the correct change for you, because in order for you to fully take advantage of what I did, that would mean that you would have to work with me, and the accessibility of how often would you and I be able to meet up for me to make sure that you're going along that path is harder than it is for you to work with Chad or for another way, because their solutions to your gun fit are less influenced by mechanics, whereas my gun fit change for you is 100% dependent on your mechanics. So you would, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really sign on, and it's not a disagreement with what you do. It's just that, like you said, accessibility for you to work with me, right?
Yeah.
I really sign on to what Chad does, and David, you and I have talked about this several times privately. Chad is probably one of the most underrated instructors or coaches in the United States. The guy is phenomenal, and his knowledge is just, it's unbelievable. It really is. He's a great coach. And here's the thing is, I talk to Chad probably every other day, where it may be again tomorrow morning or might be Christmas. So, I don't,
Yeah.
and and I don't mean to dig. I know how busy you are, and I'm not one of your students,
Right.
So, it's just that Chad was accessible, and I sign on to what he's doing, and it's similar. It's close to yours. It really is. There's a lot of similarities, which is why you guys can do clinics together,
Yeah.
But and Dr. Cola, if you're still here, you're still listening, you could have a field day with me because I was diagnosed with cataracts, presbyopia, and stigmatism in both eyes. So,
What was the second one you said? I couldn't hear you.
Cataracts, presbyopia, and stigmatism in both eyes. Now, Dr. Crollo is probably going to correct me, but for people that want to know what presbyopia is, it was explained to me that you have a lens on the front of your eye and a lens on the back of your eye. And presbyopia is where that back lens gets stiff and the muscles can't contract it anymore for focus or whatever. And basically to fix that, they do just the same thing they do with cataract is they remove that lens and they put in a man-made lens. The problem is insurance won't pick up on presbyopia, so they have to wait until the cataracts is bad enough for the insurance to pick up, and then it's still 10 grand out of my pocket. So, well, I can buy a lot of glasses for 10 grand. So,
huh? Yeah, the somebody asked a really good question that I saw. I don't remember. I know we had not gotten to it. Is Sean here?
He sent me a text that he had to run to the bathroom, and his camera's been froze up with that weird look on his face for the last 20 minutes, so I don't know. He's still on the phone.
Oh, okay. No.
Dr. Cola said, did you see that?
Yeah, that's great.
Presbyopia means you're getting to be an old fart. Yes, sir, I am. I just turned 50 last year, so yeah. I'll have to agree with you on that one, sir.
This is weird because that showed up in my community chat thing on the page, but I don't see that comment.
Hey, I know what the problem is. Trevor pointed out earlier, and I had to do the same thing with mine. So on your feed, the little upside down pyramid right there.
Yeah.
Click on that, and you can go from top messages to all messages. You need to click on all messages.
I have two chats up. One is showing top chat, and the other one is all messages, so I have both, and I still don't see his comment. That's very weird.
I'll tell you what, since we've started talking about eyes, we've got more questions and comments since the whole beginning of this thing.
I know. The ocular stuff is really, really interesting to me. Oh, that's what the question was. I saw it. It was Armando Perez said, so first off, hey Armando, how's everything going? Oh wait, let me read Richard Cola's one that I did just see now. It says, Jason, never get the lens to correct presbyopia with cataract surgery. One of the biggest problems, you get a lens implant after surgery that gives near the clearest thing. Okay, so Armando said, David, how can you avoid...
Dr. Cole... Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask if Dr. Colo can explain that, but go ahead while he's...
Okay. Yeah, while he's typing. So Armando says, how can you avoid saccadic eye movement when targets jump when there is a strong wind? So, for a target to jump enough to force saccadic movement, if you were already using smooth pursuit movement to connect to the bird, if you were already engaged in that level of connectedness with the target, I don't think it can jump that. I don't think that's possible unless. So we have to understand what, and I say it all the time, but it's because every answer to every question about saccadic versus smooth pursuit movement it really is important to like preface the explanation to these questions with the definition of the two, because that's why it makes sense. If what's happening is that you're noticing that the wind changing a bird influences your the control of your ocular muscle to go from smooth pursuit to saccadic, it's not a problem with the ocular muscle, it's a problem with your attention. So what's happening is if you see the bird jump and you think, oh, it just jumped, because you just thought that, if you had that conscious thought, or if you had any conscious thought, or if it changed your emotion, if you emotionally responded to the fact that the bird jumped, that means that you have partitioned at least some portion of your consciousness to something other than seeing the bird, and that is the reason why you switched over to using saccadic movement, and then forced into a bunch of microsaccadic movements, and the bird looks like it speeds up. The emotional response to your vision and how you're seeing the bird is a feedback loop between your conscious attentiveness to the bird. If you are truly engaged in 100% smooth pursuit vision, you won't have an emotional response to the bird jumping, because your attention will just all be on the bird, and so therefore your emotional response can't change. And the because the emotional response is a response to the conscious thought that just happened. That's why if like I've done this where you measure heart rate and stuff of like myself, of our students in a match, and in the shot, like the most calm and consistent emotional state that I have is in the shot, because of the visual connectedness of my conscious attention to the target. And I don't it's like time slows down, but it's slowing down because you're using a specific style of ocular movement that gives you information that you perceive as slower, because there's more data per unit of time, if that makes sense. It's very hard to explain quickly like that. Let me.
David, Sean sent me a text. He said he had to get to bed. He's got to get up really early in the morning. I'm good for a while, but the one thing I do got to do is get the other charger for my iPad. So give me 10 seconds here. Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that, man. Yeah, sorry about that, Dave. Hey, Dave, they're saying you have no sound. Oh, I'm glad you said it, David. Can everybody hear David now? Uh, David, they're saying they still can't hear you. That's what it says. They're saying that, yeah, ever since you switched screens, they can't hear you.
Um, well, I hate to say this, guys, but I just said probably the most important thing that has ever been said on any podcast. Um, so no, none of you missed anything.
And that statement was, I didn't say anything important.
Yeah, that's true. But no, I didn't. Nobody missed anything important because I didn't say. I was just reading comments and then talking to Jason real quick, um, and so it should all be good now. Anyways, I guess we'll just leave it on this page, and you get a free logo placement on here anyway. So that looks cool. Are you able to see what the screen looks like, Jason?
Yeah. I mean, I have to keep. Hold on. I have to keep bouncing back and forth because you have me connected on the phone, so I have to keep unmuting and muting and going back and forth to the YouTube
Right.
screen. So
Yeah, I just had it to where if one of you guys got disconnected, we would see just a big one of your logos, which looks pretty cool. It's kind of cool. Our logos are the same, somewhat of the same colors. It works out pretty good. Um, but anyway, so we should. Can you read the comments that you see Colo said, and I can probably try to answer them? I just don't think I'm seeing them all.
He said, Jason, the expensive lens implant, the clearest thing in your visual field's the end of the gun. If you truly have, and then I think this was referring to the other person's comment. It says, if you truly have a level of attention on the target necessary to minimize any conscious relationship, then there's no such thing as wind. Then he came back to me and said, Jason, your new stock is a band aid. If you do it wrong, you don't fall off the cliff as much. And then it said, David explained that to him.
So what he's saying is that he said that the new. I did get that one. Your new stock is a band aid. If you do it wrong, you don't fall off the cliff as much. But basically, what he's saying is that the the approach to fitting you with your eye higher over the rib is it is a band-aid because no matter how high you go, like my approach or Chad's or Greenwood's, they're all higher than like probably what you had before. But
Right.
it's basically a band-aid so that if you don't have the level of this visual discipline that you need for the shot to happen correctly with two eyes open and being L2 R2, that the gun being out of position makes it harder for you to pay attention to it. So,
Right.
which is it's a band-aid, and also kind of just like it's basically just putting the bumpers on the bowling lane, but that's the point of that. Like you can do the exact same mechanical approach to what you're doing, and you can shoot with two eyes open with being any type of different combination of dominance. It's just harder. I should say it's easier to do it wrong. The mechanical emphasis that would be required if you had, like, let's say a 60-40 POI, it would be very, very important for you to either have an insanely good level of visual discipline or be aligned in the mechanical completion of your mount and the timing of your trigger pull. Dr. Colo would say his phrasing for that would be that you have to pull the trigger at the B of bang, meaning that like when you look at a bird and you're rehearsing it in your move, like with your hand, when you say bang for where the break point is that you're planning, you have to pull the trigger at where the bird would be at the moment that you say bang, the B of bang, because that's the millisecond that you would pull the trigger. Any longer, you're pulling out of being visually titrated onto the bird, and you're increasing your peripheral awareness because you're getting closer to your consciously planned break point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've listened to him talk about that before on previous podcasts, and I totally understand what he's saying there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what I don't think he's asking me to explain the other stuff because that's not I'm not an expert and I'm not a optometrist or ophthalmologist, and I'm not going to explain that.
Yeah.
Oh, it says, David, what do you think about the voodoo trick you used with Curtis? Might it be a good thing to practice? Shoot with clear safety lenses and not prescription. Help with proprioception and psychotic movement. Jason, did you listen to that episode I had with Curtis yet?
I haven't listened to all of it. I've listened to, what is it, 3 episodes? I've listened to...
Yeah, it's a lot.
One. I listened to the 1 and like half of 2. But I haven't been able to get through all of it yet.
Yeah, I would be curious to see what happens for you if you try what I talked about in there, which was, if you were to take your prescription lenses off and just see like pure blurriness, and try to shoot, I would be curious to see what happens.
I'd be probably trying to jam the brass of the shell on the gun first or something.
Oh.
No, it's weird because my eyes aren't that. I mean, there's people out there with worse eyes than what I have that are breaking targets. It's just, it's very frustrating to me, and I have to consciously tell myself certain things, especially if it's a fast shot, I don't have a problem. If it's something where it's a big, slow crosser, I have to consciously tell myself to do things or I'm not going to hit it. It's not going to happen. And it has to do with my vision. I mean, a lot of it. I mean, 90% of it.
What are some of the things that you tell yourself?
It's the way I have to, because I can't, it's just the orange blob. If it's outside of 35 yards, it's an orange blob. So for me, I have to be very careful and make like marks in the background for my hold points. And because of where I see the break point. And if I'm, you talked about it before, David, like if you're waiting on it or if you had to rush the mount, um, I have to put that together very, very carefully with because of my vision. Because what happens is if it's a right to left, which is a nemesis for me, where my left eye is looking over the barrel at the hold point, if I don't put everything together just right, I'm gonna flinch. It's coming. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to come together at the same time to do all that. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
there.
and to be honest with you, there's so much stuff going on there for me. Like you said, there's a lot of things that have to come together, and I don't want to bore everybody with my problems. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. Um, it's just, I mean, it's the vision thing is frustrating for me. It really is. I mean, I wish I could see like I used to be able to. Don't we all wish we could be young again? But except for maybe you, David, because you still are and you suck. But anyway. But no, it's frustrating. It really is. I mean, it's kind of like if you can imagine putting in a pair of earplugs and you had to constantly look at somebody and go, huh, what? I mean, it's frustrating, right? It's the same
Yeah.
thing with your vision when you can't see something clearly, even with prescription lenses on. It's frustrating.
Uh, what do you? What kind of conscious thought process do you have? Does that ever consciously get in the way of your thought process while you're shooting?
Say that. Wait a minute. Let me make sure I understand that. Say it again.
Like, does that thought ever enter your mind at the moment that you're trying to shoot the bird because you're thinking like, I can't see it clearly?
No, it's as soon as I see a bird for the first time, whether I'm the first shooter or whatever, and we see the show pair, I automatically it's instant. I have to go through these steps. I know by looking at that target if it's something that's there's a method that Chad's taught me, and you and I have talked about it before. You wouldn't like it because there's really not a lot of visual connection to the target. It's a real fast shot. I mean, it's a way I could take something off the arm if I had to, like in a true pair situation where I had to take something quick off the arm on the first bird to allow enough time on the second one. I have no problem taking that shot. It's an aggressive, fast shot, and I can usually dirtball something pretty easily like that. The problem is when I have to hang on to something for any length of time, and I think that's probably part of the problem, part of the struggle I had with the droppers. You remember working with me at Cardinal Center last year on that. It's that visual thing, and I have to consciously walk myself through the steps to see the target at a certain spot, because if I focus on it too early or try to focus on it too early, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing that I really I think that conversation would be so interesting to have with Dr. Colo. I would love to have that conversation with the exact topic that you talked about. What I would want to do is give a lesson to Dr. Colo about, and then, because I know that he's had lessons from Will, and then I would love to have Will and him and me on the on my podcast, and and maybe even have like you host it, and have and talk about and learn from each other that topic of when you're transitioning from soft to hard focus, because I think if we go through defining what we technically call what I would call soft and hard focus and what Will would call soft and hard focus, and then if all of us had what really should happen is like we should do a podcast shooting clinic with completely opposite mechanics of shooters, because there has yet to be a crossover between a true understanding of the physical mechanics that I think can be used to allow hard focus for the whole shot. Where, but also I think there needs to be a definition of what I would call that, because I don't think it's neurologically, it's not perceptively possible for me to, the second I decide to try to hard focus, for me to acquire that. There's a process at which I'm ramping up the intensity of my conscious attention on the bird, but I would consider that to be a hard focus, and I want to try to hit that as early as possible. But then once I do that, I can hold that for the rest of the shot. But I think the reason why I can hold that for the rest of the shot easier than people, like the way that you would shoot, is because that you, like, it just has to do with how I make the connection and when I connect, and what I use to define a connection between the gun and the target.
Dr. Colo hit the nail on the head with this statement. This is he knows exactly what I'm. He says, Jason, if let me see if I can read this right. You can't. It said if 0 is you can't see the bird at all, and 10, it's clear and crisp. Then if you have the detail in your conscious plan that the best it is a 4, then when it's a 4, the gun's got to go off. He is exactly right. So what he's saying is if I try to focus on that too early, in other words, like if my, I'm hard to explain this on a podcast, but David, if this is my break point, okay, in other words, I've determined that is when I can see the target the clearest, and I start focusing on it when it's over here, I'm flinching right here. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes 100% sense.
So if the target's flying this way, and I've determined this is my break point, and that's where I can see it the clearest, but if I started focusing on it and I saw it clearly here, I flinch when I get to here. It happens he is exactly right. He hits that nail on the head.
So that's why I was, that's why
we need
I was
to do
asking
this podcast.
you.
You're talking.
I agree. That's why I like these live podcasts, because they're unscripted and you take feedback. What was I saying? That's why I was asking you if that thought comes into your mind when you're shooting, that you can't see it that good, because that's basically what he's talking about, where you can't be searching for more. It's all has to do with the neurology of how all these things come together and how this works and what type of ocular movement you're trying to use and then what type of physical movement you're trying to use and all that kind of stuff. So my question would be, with the explanation of what you had just explained, where if your break point is, where's my camera? If your break point is here, and you see it clearly here instead of here, then by here you flinch. Well, let's take that explanation. And my question for you would be that, when do you connect to the target?
What do you mean when do I connect to the target? That's
like, if your break point is here, when is it that you connect to the bird? Where's your insertion point?
As a general rule of thumb, I always use halfway back. But after I've shot it the first time, that's where in my post shot I go into, like what you had talked about before, if you're waiting or if you're rushing the mount, because like, did you feel rushed in the mount or did you feel like you were waiting? And then I'll make an adjustment. So my connection to the target is usually visually, it's somewhere halfway between my hold point and the trap. Okay, whatever that distance is. just say, for example, for math purposes, if you're breaking the target 50 yards away from the trap, okay,
Yeah.
from where it comes out to where I'm hitting it, it's 50 yards. My whole point's 25 yards. So that means my visual pickup point is going to be at 12 and a half yards. Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And I don't ever look at the trap. I look at something beyond the trap and let the target come into my vision. So now, if I've determined that 50% hole point, I had to wait on it,
Yeah.
then I'm going to bring it back more and try to focus sooner on the target.
Yes.
That's where I can run into a problem, because if I feel like I'm waiting too long and I decide to move my whole point back in, now I've brought my break point back in, and I either focus too quick or too late, and that's usually when there's a problem. And Dr. Colo is spitting all kinds of good stuff here. You need to catch up on this.
So I'm
And Todd, if you want me to cook, it's going to be more than $800 a person.
I'm about to do something really cool if I can get this set up fast. Okay. Okay. Let me do one more thing. Add a video capture device. Oh, no. Jason, if you can buy me like 3 minutes by interacting or talking to answering some questions, I'm gonna make it to where I can do a really badass thing on here that might help a lot of people and help you and me communicate this better.
So I got a live ad lib. I feel like I'm at the Super Squad again. Okay. So Todd says you guys should do a clinic at a club with David and Dr. Colo and the Dead Pair. $800 per person, and Jason cooks lunch. I'm telling you, if I'm cooking, it's way more than $800 a person.
Okay.
I've been on this kick where I've been watching. What the hell's that guy's name? The chef from Hell's Kitchen.
Gordon Ramsay.
Gordon Ramsay. My family's loving it because I'm making all kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. I ruined a lot of groceries figuring it out. Let's put it that way. And that's not good, as expensive as they are right now.
Okay, let's do this. So here's what I'm gonna demonstrate. Can you see the YouTube chat?
Yes.
Okay. Or can you see the YouTube screen?
Yes.
Okay, so let's make a target like this. Okay, and let's pretend that, so let's say what you're saying is that if your break point is here. Whoops. God dang it. Okay, let's say that's your break point, and where would be your insertion point?
I can't see the trap on the screen.
Well, it doesn't matter. Let's pretend the trap starts where the gun is. Would your insertion point be here?
No. If the trap is where the gun is now.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll do a better example. We'll say that the trap starts down here, and he's halfway through the move, and this is your break point. We'll say here's the trap. Where would your insertion be?
Okay, hold on. There's lag time here, so I'm waiting on the screen to catch up to what you're saying.
Oh, I see. Okay. You may be able to see the screen better if you look at your iPad, where I may be sharing the screen.
Can't. No, you'd have to share the screen on the iPad because I can't see it on the iPad.
Oh.
Okay, so the red circle is what you're saying is a breakpoint.
Yeah.
So his gun would be just a little bit farther out. In other words, do you see where the tree is off the bill of his hat?
Yeah.
Where the gun's pointing out? Not that tree, but the next one to the right, and then the little one, probably in between those two.
That's your insertion?
That's my whole point.
Your whole point is there. Okay.
Halfway, yeah, it'd be about halfway back to the trap, maybe a little less.
Okay.
On a
So
target like that.
Right. So I'm just going to roughly say this is your hold point. And then I'm going to draw a circle on there, and I know you're not going to see it yet, but I put a blue circle, and then I put an E with a question mark, and I want to know if that's where your eyes would be starting.
No, absolutely not. My eyes would be starting probably about where his thumb is right now.
Okay. So your
So
eyes.
I will actually, this is weird, David. Like, I'll actually start moving the gun on something that big. I'm actually going to start moving the gun in sync with the target, even though my whole point is out there where your H is right now.
Yeah.
As my eyes pick it up about where his chin is, I'll start moving with it, and then, yeah.
Okay, so this is why that you. This is why there's a difference in visually in the approach of how we use soft and hard focus. Because if you were to try to use hard focus the way that I use hard focus while I'm shooting, it wouldn't work with this setup. Because you can't hard focus on something that you're not looking at. And like, for example, and then not only that, but because you have that whole point out there, it forces conscious attention to the gun. This setup and this mechanical approach forces barrel awareness. You have to have barrel awareness this way, because what ends up happening is you have to consciously decide where to insert the gun, and then you feel a connection, and then you let it go proprioceptive by feeling out the shot at the end, and then you kind of like pull the trigger and don't know what the lead is. That's anything like a pull away, or even if it is a sustained lead, method-wise, because the start of the move happens consciously, because the whole point is far out and the eyes are in between, are so far out as well. What ends up happening is the bird is going to go peripheral, and it's going to be sliding into center ocular. I'm having a hard time explaining this with the feedback. Jason, can you mute?
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
Okay, so because of the fact that the target is going to be outside of center ocular from the beginning, and which it should be a little bit, but with this much of the shot being outside center ocular, there's going to be a long waiting period where the bird is coming into center ocular, and then they're going to consciously engage with the bird with your vision. And the vision is going to be consciously engaging with the bird, and then what ends up happening is you're getting into the hold point, and then the shot kind of like settles in, and whether that happens by a static gun position and then a start, or an anticipatory gun position, but the eye is in a static place, it doesn't matter, because what happens is you're not by definition, the setup of this shot mechanically cannot allow a proprioceptive start of the gun because the geometry of that won't work. The whole point is going to have to be much closer, and the focal point needs to be an area around the trap so that your start can be a responsive reactionary start as opposed to a consciously decided start in the body, and it needs to happen at the same time so that you can force yourself into feeling a relationship as opposed to seeing a relationship and then feeling a relationship. Because if you have a whole point that far out, when the bird settles into the gun, you have to go, okay, there's my insertion point. Some people define it as +1, 2, or 3, or whatever. They decide to insert at a specific spot, and they have to be consciously attentive to this to be able to do it. They insert, and because they have to be consciously attentive to this, they can't be 100% consciously attentive to this. So that means you can't be using 100% smooth pursuit vision, which means you can't be using 100% hard focus, which means you can't be using 100% proprioceptive feedback in terms of your movement, because there neurologically is attentiveness to that gun by the definition of the mechanical approach to the pair. By having an insertion, by definition, you are detracting from conscious attention to the bird. And so then your shot has to start at that moment being conscious, forced into non-conscious, which is why you have to go hard focus, soft focus. So this is not me explaining that this mechanical approach is worse than mine. This is me explaining why you can't start a hard focus from the beginning and I can. And if I were to try to use a soft focus and then consciously decide on a hard focus somewhere in the middle of the shot, then my mechanics won't work. Just as if you try to use my visual approach to the bird with your mechanics, it won't work either. Because if you try to initiate what I do, which is a hard focus very, very early, then you have to get out of a hard focus, which means you have to undo the conscious attentiveness to the bird in order to partition your conscious focus on the gun to have an insertion based off of your mechanics. And the back and forth of that forces you to have a flinch. So if you try to hard focus too early because of your mechanical approach, which is not better or worse than mine, it's just different and requires a different visual approach. If you try to misalign my visual approach with your mechanical approach, then what ends up happening is you hit hard focus too early and you can't hold it because of the definition of your mechanics that force you not to have hard focus. So if you try to hit hard focus before your insertion, you have to undo the hard focus. And by undoing the hard focus, you engage in conflicting, it's a chaos basically, and that will force a flinch. So you have to have a soft focus in terms of attentiveness to of attaching your attention of the bird visually to your attention. So you have to stay soft in your attention visually to the bird until you get done making the mechanical approach of a connection, i.e. an insertion, and then you can say, okay, now I can use 100% of my attention to look at the bird, and that's when you hit hard focus.
Right. And so it was taught to me a long, long time ago, there's a difference between looking at the bird and seeing the bird. Okay.
What's
I mean,
that?
like my dad, there's a big difference between looking at the bird and seeing the bird. I mean, like my dad taught me that back in the 90s.
Yeah.
When I still had good vision. But like, like you're looking at my hand here, you can see it. But then, or you're looking at it, right? But if you start seeing it, you're going to start noticing like the lines in my hands and, how this finger is off a little bit from this finger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You start picking up more and more detail. You're calling that focus, which is basically saying the same thing. I try to look at the bird, and then as it gets closer to where I want to break it, then I start really ramping up my focus. Now, Dr. Colo here, we really need to catch up on this because he basically, I mean, and I'm going to jump ahead here to one of the things he said. He says here, David, when he first sees the bird, if he had 100 units of visual attention, then they would be in the area of a softball, then a baseball, then a golf ball, then a pea.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm getting at. That's how I try to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just, I'm not.
That would be me explaining it as, let's say like you have your conscious attention is from 0 to 100. And let's say the two things that we have to pay attention to, understand the definition of what I mean. This is why coaches argue. Because when I say you have to pay attention to, what I'm saying is conscious attention. I'm not saying visual attention. At all times, you need to be visually looking at the bird. But I can look at you and think about my dog. You know what I mean? And so
yeah.
in a shot, I could be looking at the bird, but thinking about something else. When I say you need to pay attention, what I mean is you need to be looking at the bird and thinking about the bird. So in a shot, all of us will be looking at the bird and should be looking at the bird. And what Colo is saying is correct in saying that you need to go a softball, baseball, golf ball, pea. What I would say is that the way I would explain it would be like basketball, volleyball, softball, whatever, a smaller and smaller area. What my explanation of that would mean that, let's say that we're both looking at the bird from the beginning, but I have, when Colo says it's going to start at a softball, to me, that means 80% of my attention is on the bird, 20% is something else. It doesn't matter what else it is. Then when he says a baseball, now I'm at 85%. When he says a golf ball, now I'm at 95%. When he says a pea, I'm at 99%. And that's the conscious attention, because the more attention you pay to the thing that you're looking at, the smaller your area of focus becomes, and the more engaged you become consciously and neurologically with your vision. And the more those two things synchronize, and the higher your proprioceptive movement and connection and feedback becomes. So, what I'm saying is immediately from the start of the movement of the bird, when I call pull, I'm immediately trying to go soft, whatever the ball is, to a smaller ball. I'm trying to go from 80 to 100 immediately as it starts. The closer I get to 100% conscious focus on whatever I'm looking at, so we should say, the closer that my conscious thought is fully involved in the thing that I am looking at, the more I am thinking about the thing I'm looking at, the less I will be thinking about what I see in my peripheral, which is the gun. And that's where you get to the P, and that's when you pull the trigger at the B a bang. So, what I'm saying is that if we have an insertion point in our mechanics, that prevents you from going to the P early. And if you get to the P in your vision before your insertion point, then that's going to cause a flinch because you're at the P. But to pay attention to your insertion point, you have to be at the softball. And so then you have to pay attention to the bird, pay attention to the gun, and that causes the flinch. It's hard to explain, it's confusing to listen to, which is why it causes a flinch, because it's complicated. So what you would have to do is make sure that your insertion is at a moment where the place that you need to put the gun is inside the size ball that you're seeing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah. And that's where, if you put the insertion, if your insertion point is bigger than the area that you're seeing, the way that Colo would say, that's where the flinch happens. You can't titrate it faster than your mechanics allow, if that makes sense. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
We got a lot to catch up on here, David.
Yeah. This is really freaking fun. I only have 2 comments since I started talking.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Let's go way back here. So Dr. Carlos said, David, his flinching is occurring when he's going from active to passive with his visual attention, which is referring to what you said. Nate said, you ain't no Gordon, Jason. You're right. I'm much sexier than Gordon Ramsay. Okay, David King said, he's got a question here. It says, so is it possible that when Jason or someone gets close to their break point and the timing of the shot is off, even though you can see the target clearly, would the timing or the feel of the shot cause the flinch? I think you kind of explained some of that there.
I'm pulling this up on a incognito browser to see if I can see these comments that I'm missing.
Ron Schwartz says, wouldn't you want your eyes to be as close to the machine or arm as possible?
No, it's no different. This is so weird how I see different stuff. First party at 100 units of visual attention. Yeah, we got that. The P, the gun. Read me again a question you want me to answer, because I don't see it.
Well, so let's go back to David King's question. It says, so is it possible that when Jason or someone gets close to their break point and the timing of the shot is off, even though you can see the target clearly, would timing or feel of the shot cause the flinch?
God dang it. I hate ADHD because I can't understand what you're saying, because as you're reading it, I need to read it. Oh, I see it now. So is it possible that when Jason or someone gets close to their breakpoint and the timing of the shot is off, even though you can see target clearly, would timing or feel of the shot cause a flinch? Is it possible when Jason or someone gets close to their breakpoint, the timing of the shot is off? I don't really think I understand that question. Do you, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I understand what he's saying.
Is it possible that when Jason or someone gets close to their breakpoint and the timing of the shot is off, even though you can see the target clearly? Oh, I see. I guess it depends on what you would cause or what you would call timing. Like, I mean, you would definitely flinch if you put it this way. The best way to explain this is that in order for a perfect shot to happen, 4 things. Okay, this is through my mechanics. 4 things need to happen. Number 1, you need to hit what I would call 100% visual titration, what Colo would call the P or the B of bang, or the size of a P / the B of bang. So that's one thing. You need to get 100% involved in seeing the bird. You need that to happen at the break point. You need those 2 things to happen at the moment that you finish the mount. And then lastly, you need to pull the trigger. So, yes, if you could potentially cause a flinch in any mechanical style if you hit your break point and planned level of visual acuity, and planned area of the line, but did not complete your mechanics yet. Yeah, that could cause it generally doesn't too much. Generally what happens is that you'll just complete the mechanics and the bird will be broken later, but that goes into the psychology essentially of like how attentive are you to seeing the bird versus seeing the background. If you're paying a lot of attention to the background and you notice that you're past your break point, then that it's so complicated. It's
To be honest, David, I'm afraid to dive too deep into this in public because everybody's just going to start wondering if there's another sport that I like that,
yeah, exactly. It's so complicated to explain because of it's not that the thing is complicated, it's that the possibilities are infinite of why it could cause something. And so the explanations get hard because they could be so many things. Like if we saw a video of somebody shooting and that was a flinch, then it would not be complicated. It'd be very easily be able to tell you why. But if for me to explain, could it cause a flinch if this happened? Yes, it could in all these other different ways, but also no, it couldn't in all these different ways. And I guess the real problem is that my personality is that I can't just answer that question by saying it could, but it also couldn't. Jason, do you have any questions about anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to get this video to send to you right now. I was hoping that maybe you could bring it up on screen if you wanted to pick on
Say
something.
that one more time. You were kind of.
I'm trying to get this video to send to you. I don't know if you have any way of putting it up on screen, but I thought maybe you could pick on.
You have a video of yourself?
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. What am I doing here? It's trying to send, David. Oh, I think it just went through. Yep, it just went through. You should have it now.
And I got it. See, I'm really not bad at technology. Watch what I'm about to do.
Scares me and I'm fearless.
What's that?
I said, scares me and I'm fearless.
Okay. Jason, do you mind if I don't think anybody would mind if I made the video bigger but covered both of us up, do you?
Oh, I don't care.
Okay. I want to do this as good as I can so people can see and I can possibly help you out better. I guess I'm just now I feel like a total jerk because I'm just gonna cover you up. Okay. Is this a video of you flinching?
No, I didn't flinch. This is just part of my setup, and you should, even though you can't see the target, I knew you, and you should be good enough to tell, like, where the gun goes off from where the hold point was.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You'll be able to see a lot of what I'm talking about the way I have to set up. And Chad's worked with me a lot on this, and this is why I think he's such a great coach, too.
So, what... Let's see. So this is the difference in like your mechanics versus my mechanics, where like the thing I would tell you isn't going to be hugely applicable to you because you wouldn't shoot it this way, because you can't shoot this way to use your mechanics, which is that like your mount is up in the hands and then over in the body, and it's faster, and like the hands are fast. And I don't see the bird at all in this video, so I can't really tell you like where everything is. But see this.
Well, that might have been a bad one because it was a rabbit. So.
Oh, that's okay. But like like the way that my mechanics work is that the way that my mechanics work is that basically, if you're shooting both eyes open, like this would have a high probability of causing a flinch or a miss because of the length of time that you are in the gun, and I'm going to show you how long it is. Okay, so right there was when you called pull. Okay, right there is when you started your movement. Right there is when you finished your mount. Right there is when you pulled the trigger. So the whole shot was 1.7 seconds. And for basically, let's just make the math easy. When you called pull to when you pulled the trigger was 1.7 seconds. But the moment that you started to move until you pulled the trigger was 0.86 seconds. And 0.53 of those seconds, you were already mounted. So there's a massive ratio of total time in the gun to total time moving. And the longer that we're in the gun, the higher probability that you're going to see the gun. And so if we talk about like visual discipline, that's where what I'm saying is because of the mechanics of the move. So like essentially if this, well, I'm gonna have to do it, well, I'll do it the right way. We'll say that this was the line of the bird, and if we just say that, let's pretend that break point is here, we'll just say whole point is here, maybe your eyes were here, then I'm going to make a move in blue that kind of shows the mechanics of what happened. It would have been like, if hold point is here, what translated out at the point of impact to this movement was, and I'm loaded up on coffee, so it's going to be shaky. It's going to be like, I should say, oh, you know what I can do? This would be kind of cool. Watch this. We'll get to 0. And it'll be like...
Okay, look, dude, if you start drawing funny things on me, I'm going to hang up.
No, I'm not. So it'll be like, we call pull, and you were right here, and the eyes are right here. Then we get to the moment that we start to move, right there. And at this point, still the same thing, because basically that 0.83 seconds was the delay and the trapper pulling and everything like that. So we're still at that point. Then we get to... Oh, I'm going backwards. Then we get to this point, and basically we're right here. Eyes are still there. So now we made this move. Eyes are still there, and the target is probably here, right about where our eyes are. Okay, so now we get to, let's go halfway through. So we'll say 25-ish. Okay, so at this point now, blue is your gun, red is the target. At this point now, we're probably right here, and the target is probably right here. And then progressing through even more, right there is the trigger pull, and that's when, you know, target is right there, and so is the gun at the end. So like the movement of the gun went like this, bang, while the target obviously followed the target line like that, bang. But what happened is all of this movement in here gave you an opportunity to lose visual discipline, gain barrel awareness, and fight that. And you had to you were in the gun to where you have to make a conscious insertion. So that little insertion point right here forces barrel awareness, because you have to, because of the fact that the gun is going up but the bird is coming across. And so then when those two things marry and you get that connection, you consciously hold the connection by definition. Then at some point later on down in here is when we go to the size of the P, or, well, that should actually happen at the break point, but that's like at that point, that's when, the best way I can explain it is like coaches will say, you let the hands take over, you make the move, and you pull the trigger. That letting the hands take over thing happens somewhere around here. And so that then basically what happens is this much of the shot is proprioceptive. The way that I would shoot this would be that my eyes would be here. My whole point, I don't know exactly where it would be, but let's just pretend that it's here. And the second that the bird starts to move, I start to move, but on the point of impact. Or on the line. My point of impact is always on the line, and I'm blending the speed of the, I can do it like this. I'm blending the speed vertically of the bird with the speed of my hands. So if there's that much vertical change from my starting point to my finishing point, then that's going to equal my draw length. And you do pretty good with that, you see? And but what you do is your hand speed is too fast because you covered all of the space in your body at the moment that the bird came off the trap. If you blend that space over the whole horizontal move of the bird, now what happens is if you do this without changing the plane of your gun, then you're going to always keep the plane of the gun and the point of impact of the gun on the line of the bird proprioceptively by faking it, because you're using geometry to fake proprioception. And the geometry keeps the point of impact on the line of the bird by matching the hand speed to the target, to the vertical target speed. So you're drawing that little tiny vertical movement out over the whole course of the line, to where when the bird gets to the break point, your mount gets to being mounted, and you never had to deal with getting to an insertion point after you got to a smaller focal position or higher level of conscious attentiveness to the target, causing a flinch, because you could have hit the P, so to speak, in terms of how attentive you are to the target, anywhere on that white line, because the gun is out of the center ocular part of your vision and outside of the attentiveness to what you're paying attention to. That was a terrible explanation. Outside of the space at which you are paying attention to in your vision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know if it's because you have that up or what, but all of a sudden I lost chat. So
Oh yeah, every once in a while that happens.
I just he must be a little behind. Uh, Chad said he was in his 30s when he started. I got a text from him.
What do you say?
He was in his 30s when he started shooting.
Oh, cool.
Um, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I can't bring up chat now.
That's what happens, man. Every once in a while, like it I don't know what. I haven't got a message in like a long time.
Really?
Yeah, but I'm seeing all the analytics, and we're at like 200 some views, like long view duration. There's definitely people here. The chat rate has been at 0 for a long time, but then what will happen is if we stay here long enough, it's gonna go and it's all gonna load really fast. And you're gonna just be like, what?
Well, I'm gonna have to go back. I mean, everything you just explained.
Yeah.
Because I can hear you instantly, but it's lag on the feed. So like you're
yeah.
like so from here to here, and I'm like, what's he talking
anything.
about? Then you go from here to here, and I'm like, all of a sudden there's all these lines. All over
I
the
did
screen.
nothing but confuse the hell out of you right there.
Yeah, it got to the point. I was like, was my shoe untied? Zoom
Yeah.
in on it, you know. But no, you did. I understood what you were saying. I just couldn't see it until it caught up. So
Yeah.
very interesting. I mean, you know, there's been while we're doing this, I'm getting text messages and what's in the chat. A lot of people are saying we need to do this. We need to
agree.
get Polo involved, and Chad had the idea of call it the Dead Pair Journey.
Oh,
episode.
cool.
But I think that would be cool, and I don't know, maybe we can piggyback on the clinic that you guys are planning on or something. But
That would be very cool.
I think, I mean, there's enough people asking for this. Obviously, there's some interest in it. So
Yeah, like I think this is fun, and it's good for I mean, I'm shutting off my little iPad thing again. But yeah, I think this kind of thing is really cool. I think it's fun, and I don't have a problem doing this all the time. It's fun to have you guys on, and if you guys are wanting to grow your YouTube live stuff, I mean, I can do that for you. Now we have this seem to be working pretty good, but like we should try to figure out a way to broadcast both YouTube channels at the same time. Well, basically, all you guys have to just call in like this.
from what I understand, there is a way of doing that. I know.
Yeah, I know there is. I just don't know. I got to look into it.
Yeah. But
if generally what I do when the chat goes down like that, I'll just call the live. But we could I mean, we can call it pretty soon because basically everybody. Yeah, Nate says everyone's sleeping. Triangles. What are people talking about? I think maybe they were doing psychedelics or something while we were talking. Yeah, that was really cool. I think that it's really fun to have everyone together like that. We definitely need Colo. The way that this is working, I just got to figure out why the audio. I mean, the software is working good. The problem is my physical setup is so complex here that I have so many audio sources that I can listen to. I just got to figure out which one it will be, and then as soon as I get that, I could literally have call-ins where if I just sent somebody that link, they could join. So we could have Colo in. You know, I mean, we could have had Colo in right now in Sean's little box, but I just don't have a way to make sure we can hear him. But as soon as I fix that, we could do that, and it would be fun.
that would definitely be cool.
Yeah.
If we do something like physically at a clinic or something like that, the big thing is we're gonna have to film it. I mean, there's no getting around. People will never understand what we're talking about by doing it just audio. It have to be filmed, which is cool though because like I've got the new shot cam. Sean's got the new one. You've got the new one. Plus with some cameras and stuff. There's got to be a way that I'm sure you know more than I do of how to put those side by side videos together.
Yes.
You
yeah.
know,
You
and
look
be
at
able
the
to do that.
timestamps.
What's that?
You can. Long story short, there's a way to do it, and it's awesome. You can seamlessly blend the shot cam video with a third person video, and it's fantastic.
Well, see, and I think what would be cool. So, even if Dr. Colo couldn't make it to that, you could still go ahead and do some of that in the clinic, and then have him sit down with you and review all the footage and let him talk during the podcast so he can explain. You know what I mean? I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, well, the wife finished editing the podcast while we were just getting started with this. I still have to load it to Buzzsprout. I still have to make the YouTube static video. And last time I did this, it took 4.5 hours to get it to load to YouTube. So it's going to be a late night.
Yeah.
Well, I live out in the boonies, so I have no internet. So, I mean, like dial up is faster than what I have. So, but so I'm gonna have to get off of here. But
I might do the same thing. We'll call it on that. Well, hey, I appreciate you coming on. I thought that was really fun.
Dude, thank you for inviting us. I appreciate it. I mean, it was fun. I've never done anything like this before, and it was pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, it's fun to go back and forth with the people live, I think. Yeah.
For sure. Well, I mean, we'll get a little bit more attention out next time instead of you like 10 minutes ahead of time telling everybody we're going to do this.
Maybe we'll get it working better.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I'm anxious for everybody to hear part 2 tomorrow. We need to figure out what the award's going to be.
I know. We'll have to figure it out. How about this? The loser buys those chicken wings in Florida next year.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, but you have to understand, if we win, it's not what I want to eat; it's what the wife wants to eat.
Yes, very true.
If we win, you're going to get her menu. You'll probably get a text to you first thing tomorrow morning or something.
Deal.
But I told her the contest was on, and I
that's
said,
probably she's probably been working real hard. I should have never said that. I'm about to get my ass whooped. I know it.
Well, the way I explained it to her is, you remember the episode where you told me David owes you a fifth of vodka for making him sound intelligent? She's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, that challenge is on again. She's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, he put it out there on his that we'll see who sounds better and award the winner. There she went. So,
yeah.
It's on.
Listen, she better not do too good of a job, because then I'm going to have to hire her and she's going to have double the work.
David, you can't afford her, okay? You cannot afford her. I can't afford her.
Oh my gosh, that's good.
So,
dang.
No, seriously though, this was fun. Apologize to everybody I can't see the chat for missing somebody or something.
No, everyone's just saying like thanks a lot, good night type thing.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Well, I wish I could see it, but I'll look at it tomorrow once you load this up as a recorded one, right?
Yeah, it'll be there.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Good deal. Well, thanks again, David, and let's do it soon. Let's do it again.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, thank you, Jason, and thanks to Sean. I didn't realize he must, that was my fault. I didn't know when he was going, and but thank you everybody in the chat for coming and participating. It was a lot of fun, and we'll do it again soon. And obviously we need to say, make sure tomorrow morning that you listen to part 2 on the Dead Pair.
Yep, it'll be out 5 a.m.
Awesome.
So,
I will be asleep.
Good deal.
See you guys. Yeah, see you.